Welcome to the Tom Golly official podcast, and with me today is a very special guest, John Martin Keith, a.k.a. Marty, at least that's what I call him. I know that if he likes you, he'll let you call him Marty.
I like most people then, because everybody calls him Marty.
But he is actually the, I guess, the owner, operator, head honcho, and host of the You Can Make a Living in the Music Industry podcast. I think I said that correctly.
You did. Absolutely. That is correct.
Yeah. So, Marty, what's up, man? Good to see you.
It's good to see you. Thanks for having me on your show.
Well, thanks for having me on your show, man. It was an honor to be asked to share what I know or pretend to know, verbally on someone else's podcast. And I enjoy it when it's, I enjoyed getting to share info, especially the business side of the industry that a lot of people just aren't super familiar with.
Yeah, absolutely.
So that's really great. So you've been doing the podcast thing for how long?
This is the third season. I'm currently recording season 3 right now, and about maybe halfway through recording it currently. So seasons 1 and 2 are out anywhere that you listen to podcasts, and it's been very successful. I've had amazing artists and producers and writers and all kinds of stuff. Yeah. So the purpose of my podcast is to let the audience know, for people that are wanting to or are actively trying to make a living in music, that you can actually do this.
Yeah.
And anytime I tell people, hey, I've got a podcast, I'd love to, I want a guest to come on and be on the show, and they say, I say, the podcast is called You Can Make a Living in the Music Industry, and they just start laughing. Yeah. Really? You can do that? We're like, and yes, it is funny, and it's kind of the joke, but yes, it is true. You can do this, because if I'm asking you to be on my show, then obviously you are making a living in music. And so,
yeah, in some regard, it doesn't mean it's your only way you're making any kind of money, but yeah.
No, but the focus, most of the people on my show, they do make a full living at it. Okay. Now, that being said, what you and I do, we have multiple streams of income,
right, that
allow us. I do 7 or 8 different things in music,
right,
that allow me to make a living in music full time.
Yeah.
I am an artist, I'm a songwriter, I'm a producer, I'm a worship pastor, I'm a guitar teacher, I'm a booking agent. That's at least 6.
Yeah.
And there are at least 2 or 3 more that I can't even think of at the moment that I do. And so all those things combined, I write music for and produce music for sync, for TV and film stuff.
Yeah.
So all those things together allow me to be a full-time musician.
Yeah, which, I need someone to teach me about how to get involved in sync, because I know a lot of people who do it, mm-hmm. and just I've never had the time or they've just never really expressed the ability or interest to be like, yeah, dude, I can walk you through how sync works.
Yeah.
Because that just seems like an exciting way, an outlet for creating music, because, as an artist, you're always like, okay, cool, I want to write a song that has impact and that I can market, that has something that looks good on a t-shirt, and, that would be fun to play live. But on the other hand, it's like, man, it might be really cool to just think about, hey, there's movies that always have a montage scene that could use a cool song for that. Let's write a montage type of song. Or, hey, maybe there's a Grey's Anatomy kind of post-tragedy song they need something for, that sounds fun, and they don't have to be 4-minute long songs either.
Well, so yes and no. Mm-hmm. So the way that sync works, when you talk about Grey's Anatomy and music on shows like that, sync music, it is a lot of fun. It is different. Mm. It's the same, and it's different than a normal song that you would hear on the radio. It's written to be the same as a song that you hear on the radio. So it's a full song. So it's 3 or 4 minutes long.
Oh, okay.
I mean, typically you write the song to be the full thing. Now, what they're going to do is the editors are going to take the song and they're going to edit it down to fit into the montage that you're talking about. So they may only use a verse and a chorus.
Right.
So you may only hear part of it, but they want you to send them a full produced song.
Yeah.
And one of the things that you can't do when it comes to sync music is you never send in a demo. They want a fully produced song up front, ready to go, and they want stems, for all the different ways that you can do it. They want instrumental versions. They want a TV mix. They want
Yeah.
the stems all stemmed out, so they can edit and blend things how they need to. Because the purpose of a sync song is to work in concert with the dialogue.
Yeah.
Your song is not the focus of the piece.
Right.
The dialogue is the star of the show. And so we are to be underneath that, supporting that to help facilitate the story.
Right.
Right. And so you have to be really careful on what you're saying in a song.
Yeah.
And so the whole purpose of sync music is to be universal.
Okay.
It's universal lyrics.
Have you had any placement?
I've had a few.
Anything like super notable?
That's a good question. My biggest placements have been on The Young and the Restless,
Okay.
on the soap opera. The Young and the
Yeah.
Everybody's like, what? The Young and the Restless? Are you kidding me?
That's a big deal.
No, it is.
Yeah.
It is, because it's network TV. It's daytime TV, and anything I can get on network TV, ABC, CBS, NBC, those three networks, is good money.
Yeah.
Now, sync music usually works this way. You get a sync fee. That's what it's called, sync music. Synchronization. They're syncing your song to the picture of whatever the show or the movie is. And then you get a sync fee. You get paid up front a certain amount that they're going to say, we're going to pay you this amount up front to license your song to put it in our show or our movie. And then on the back end, you get royalties as well.
Right.
You know, on every few months or whatever, from BMI, CSAC,
That's great.
whatever. And then, but not always. You don't always get that upfront sync fee. And so
Right.
that depends on the company that you're with that's getting the song placed.
So that's the key.
Well, usually, I mean, it just depends on what the situation is. Every placement is different.
Right.
And because a production company is going to say, we need this song for this show, this style. Here's what we can pay you to do it. It
Sure.
might be $500. It might be $3,500. It might
Right.
be $15,000. I mean,
Now,
it goes all over the map.
Do they hire you, say, hey, we want a song, and you got to keep chopping wood until you find when they go, yes, like that? Or are they just expecting you to nail it the first time?
No, you got to nail it.
Okay.
Or they're going to move on. So the production company is not hiring you. So
It's like a bid then. It's like, hey, this is what we'll pay if we like what you provide us.
What happens is you have a sync licensing agent.
Yeah.
That you write for. So I've got 7 or 8 different licensing agents that I write music for.
Okay.
That pitch my music
Okay.
to different production companies, different networks for shows.
Yeah.
And so they will take, I'll write songs that will fit whatever it is that they're looking for. Like, they send what's called briefs.
Mhm.
The agency will send briefs, and they say, they're looking for this show or this network or production company, whoever is looking for a song in this genre style, this lyrical content, that matches something along this whatever line. And then we write a song and we fully produce it, and usually have 24 hours to maybe
Oh, wow.
72 hours. You have maybe usually less than a week, maybe a couple of days
Wow.
if you're lucky, that they need to have it, because the music is always the last thing
Wow.
to be considered when they're putting shows together.
So are you ever using like things like Splice and stuff like that, like
Mm-mm.
pulling samples off and like tweaking stuff? Or are you just all original right off the top, kind of creating everything from top down?
Yeah, it's all original.
Wow.
Yeah.
Because I know there are a lot of sync writers out there utilizing a lot of sampling and things to.
You have to be really careful. That's a dangerous.
Yeah,
that's
sure
a
is.
dangerous
Yeah.
ground when you're using samples, because that's usually a big no-no. You have to be really careful of that stuff. There are certain things that you can. I'll say there are certain things you can get away with, but it's very, very, very
Yeah.
sketchy.
Yeah, I mean, I know like the right way to use something like a Splice, for instance, is like, okay, you find this cool loop on Splice, bring it in, and then filter the crap out of it, tweak it, maybe, use like Melodyne to maybe change the melody a little bit to it. Just like you're supposed to use it for inspiration, not necessarily so use for inspiration, not necessarily to like, hey, use this, You mentioned earlier having multiple streams of income, and very similar to me, actually. I do multiple things. I'd say a lot of my income is like it's just entrepreneurial based. You know, if it's not nailed down, I'm willing to sell it.
Right.
You know, so I personally do some reselling and things like that. And I mean, does it? Are you similar to me where sometimes where you know people who struggle big time financially, and like, do you kind of feel like, man, I wish, like almost like you know something no other people don't, because it's like knowing how easy it is to flip something, to buy something cheap and sell it for more.
Mhm.
It makes me kind of sad that more people don't do it. Do you ever struggle with that at all? Like, man, you just want to teach everyone how to do it?
I don't know if I struggle with it. I love doing it
Yeah.
personally. I know that we've talked about you resell, you buy and resell things, and so
Yeah.
and we were talking about that earlier off camera. Is that I do that as well. I've done it in the past a
Yeah.
lot. I don't do it as much as I used to at the moment, but
Uh-huh.
my wife and I used to have an antique excuse me, an antique booth,
Yeah.
and so I would go out when I'm on tour playing shows and I'm in Kansas or Missouri or whatever, or down in Florida or something like that, and I'm always stopping at antique stores or estate sales, and I do that. My daughter and I go out to estate sales on the weekends, whatever, and I'll be out and I'll find cool stuff, super cheap, and I'll bring it back, and we'd have an antique booth set up in a mall, and then set it up and then resell it and make a profit on it, and I love doing that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And I don't get to do it that much anymore because that particular mall that we were set up in closed a few years ago. And at the time, we just had too much going on, couldn't really focus on those things. So we thought, you know what, when we get older, have more time, and the music thing kind of dies down to some degree, and we can kind of get back into this, and we'll focus on that. But
Yeah.
I love doing it, and I have a great affinity for
Yeah.
buying and selling cool old stuff,
Yeah.
like vintage type stuff from like the 60s,
Yeah,
60s,
it's fun.
70s, and 80s, which is my era. I grew up in
Yeah.
the 80s,
A
70s,
lot of
and 80s.
nostalgia involved in it sometimes too, right? Like,
Oh yeah,
I mean, I was at a garage sale. So similar to you, so I was a reseller years ago. And again, I kind of did it as a side hustle. I was working for UPS at the time. I was a full-time, driver working Monday through Friday. So Saturdays and Sundays were like, cool. I realized, hey, I can hit garage sales because I'm at a couple of these garage sales and, realizing, wow, like, and at that time, smartphones were like very new to the world. I mean, we're talking 2008, 9, I mean, I think the first iPhone was only out for a year, and I had kind of figured it out back then, like, wait, I can look these things up on eBay right here in this person's driveway. And, realizing, whoa, I can kind of make comfortable decisions going, oh, wow, this thing sells for $50 on eBay. They want $2 for it. I'm going to buy it,
yeah,
went home, cleaned it or whatever, took pictures, sold it like in 20 minutes. Like, wow, I could do this more.
yeah,
And, kind of turned it into a kind of like just a side business. Eventually when I realized that UPS wasn't for me after 7 years. I was like, this isn't for me. I don't want to do this anymore. And I was comfortable enough to leave because I was making a decent amount of money. And in the long run, I ended up failing because I kind of went about it in a little bit too safe of a manner. I was like, well, I'm only going to spend X amount of dollars. I need to make us X amount of dollars so I can survive. And all it takes is 1 or 2 rainy weekends in a row with no garage sales. And before you know it, I got no money to buy things and I got no money left to live on. And so that's why I failed. I didn't scale enough. If you're going to try to do it full time, you got to scale pretty big. You got to buy out as much as you can, as quick as you can, and always have extra stuff to continue to list. I just literally would buy just enough, list it all, never had like a death pile, as you call it, at that time. And nowadays, it started off as a challenge, actually. I hadn't done it in years. Started doing it this year again, where, a buddy of mine and I, we were filming some podcasts as like test episodes. We were planning on putting out this thing called Green Hammer Grind, and we still might do it, but it was all about making money, Green Hammer is like, when you see like a stock candlestick chart, when it finally, like a stock finally breaks through and it starts to really be in the incline on the chart, it looks like a green hammer,
Right.
So he was kind of telling me how, man, the best way to make extra money is gig economy. And I'm like, I 1,000% disagree. Cause you're beating up on a vehicle or whatever it is, they're sort of, they're sort of, it's more limited than you realize. So just to kind of prove to him that, yeah, man, like you can make a lot of money doing this, I started going to some garage sales just on Saturday. And like a month later, I had a spreadsheet and I showed him, hey, look how much I spent. This is how many hours I spent doing this. And look how much money I profited, and I like 10x'd my money. Just, it was crazy. And like, it was eye opener for him. And part of it was like, man, I wish we could teach more people about this and it's interesting because I've had people I know who are constantly on Facebook, like, pray for us, pray my husband gets a better job, pray for a miracle. So like, and what I started kind of doing is, they if you're hearing me talk about this, yes, I did this to you. You didn't realize I was doing it. But we started having conversations where I was asking you like, hey, so like, what you been doing? Oh yeah, what'd you do yesterday? Meanwhile, I'm talking about how they spend their Saturday. And then, I'd even be like, no, for real, like what time did you get up yesterday? And they're like, well, I got up at like around 11. And, and I'm like, oh, cool. Then what? Well, we had breakfast and then I binge watched a couple episodes of Netflix and this, that, and now I'm sitting here looking at, okay, so you got up at 11. Then it was 3:00. What else? But meanwhile, they've been posting about how they've been struggling financially and they've been having these problems.
Need a job.
And I'm thinking to myself, like, well, me, like at that time, I had just gotten back into garage sailing, right? And I'm thinking, I totally could have slept till 11 and I could have done exactly what you did, but I didn't. I was up at 5 a.m., getting ready and mapping out my garage sale route to go out and look for stuff. That actual Saturday, I found 2 items out of all the items I bought, 2 particular items that I had spent $20 on one of them and I spent $5 on the other. Now, this isn't always the norm, but that Saturday, $25, I turned into $1,400 in 2 days.
Wow.
Because one was just like these amazing Bose like garden speakers.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. That like most people, I mean, I just caught the Bose logo as I was leaving the garage sale and I'm like, oh, what are these? And I look them up and I'm like, oh, how much you want for these? You would have said 100, I would have bought them. $20. They sell for $5. Used in worse condition than that. Bought them. Another thing I found it was like a digital, it was like a tuner for diesel engines. I just happened to ask the lady how much it is. She goes, oh, I don't know. It was my son's. I don't even know what it is. $5 will do. Cool. Gave her $5. Honestly, at that point, I didn't even look it up right away. I was just like, I've heard of these things. I think they're valuable. And it was just starting to rain. So I'm like, $5 here. Go home, look it up. Brand new. That thing's $1,000. I sold it for $750.
Wow.
Crazy, right?
Yeah.
Anyone can do that. Anyone.
Sure.
And you get people who have said to me, I mean, I've had fans of mine been like, I wouldn't even know where to start. I go, start in your own garage. Literally go, I haven't used this in forever. What's the model number and the name? Look it up on eBay. Look it up on Mercari. Look it up wherever. What's it selling for? Cool. There's your education right there. I didn't know anything about Bose speakers. eBay told me it was worth money, so I bought it. I didn't know anything about this diesel tuner. eBay told me,
Mm-hmm.
It's all at your fingertips. All you got to do is put the work in, and I see people all the time, like, we'll be at like a Goodwill, they call it Goodwill bins. We'll go there sometimes and we'll talk to people. There's some people who literally, they come out every weekend. They come out to the Nashville area because they said that from up in Kentucky, because they said the garage sales are better. And Goodwill Bins is just, it's so good that it's this couple and their daughter, teenage daughter. They come and they stay in a cheap, like a budget motel or something on Friday night. So they're here Saturday and Sunday and Monday morning. And like, that's how they make a living. And they're willing to drive to the Nashville area to do that. Now, and part of it too, they said they have a lot of competition up where they live. And I get it, I do. But man, there's stuff out there that everyone could be doing to make extra money and do it. And it sort of hurts my heart sometimes that more people like are just, they think it's harder than it is, And I almost want to help teach them because I know it's hard because not everyone is, I get it. Entrepreneurship is not everyone's cup of tea.
Yeah. The thing that I've struggled with the most on doing the reselling, trying to do eBay reselling and things like that is I put some stuff up recently, the past couple of months, and spent a lot of hours getting it all put together, getting all the pictures, getting it loaded up, making sure all the information is correct,
Uh-huh.
because that's, the thing that I hate is with that is the whole, what's the box size going to be and the weight and whatever. You're like, well, I have no idea what that's going to be. I'm not even to that point yet
Yep.
of needing to know that, and they want to have this information. So you got to try to figure that kind of stuff out. And then it just sits there. Like you're selling stuff like 20 minutes after you load it up. And I've got stuff that I look, because I always go to the sold completed items to see
Yes,
what they've
correct.
sold for in the past, right?
Yes.
That's what you do.
That's what I do.
And I'm saying, okay, well, I've got the same thing. So, they've got this price here is that it's sold for, and then they got this price here that it's sold for. So I try to average it out, put in the middle. And then my stuff just sits there for 2 months and doesn't move. I'm like, well,
Yeah.
I don't understand. And to the point that now I'm starting to have to pay eBay to have my stuff up on the site.
Right.
I'm losing money. Forget that.
Yeah.
So I'm pulling it off because I don't have.
Yeah, it's a crazy thing. I think eBay has become this algorithmic thing too. And I've proven this theory a couple of times. Because my wife and I were talking about it one time. And so my wife has an account. Now, granted, I've had my account for years. I've already had a ton of feedbacks to begin with. So, she started from a zero. Like, okay, I'm going to start a fresh account, brand new. And obviously, the eBay is definitely it's harder to sell when you're brand new. It takes a while to get there. But even as an established account, like I think I have 400 items for sale right now. And what I've noticed, and I've kind of proven it, is when you don't list stuff consistently, it's almost not that eBay punishes you, but it's almost like they make your listings less visible. And it's the craziest thing. So I sold one thing on eBay yesterday. I normally sell 5, 6, 7, 8 things a day, usually. And part of that is because my process is every morning during my morning coffee, I list 3 to 5 things. And then usually before I go to bed, I list 3 to 5 things. So I'm listing about 10 things every day anyway, and I find when I consistently list new things, and the what people have claimed is that then eBay rewards your account with a higher visibility rate, so that if someone searches for an item that you have for sale, you're higher on that list when they scroll. So if there's 5 items, 5 of that item that exist on their marketplace, or 100, you'll land higher on the list.
Yeah.
And I've noticed that if I stop listing, so like I didn't list yesterday. I'm sorry, I didn't list on Monday and Tuesday. And yesterday I only shipped one pack, or this morning I shipped one package. I only sold one thing. Then I listed a bunch of stuff just this morning. And sure enough, I was in a session before this episode and 4 or 5 things sold. And it's like, there's something to that, And I've even found items that have been sitting a while. If I if I end the listing and not relist, but, sell one like this, eBay counts it like a new listing. So I find that there are days where if I just don't have time to make new listings, I'll go and end all my old ones and then wait like 10 minutes, come back in, go into the unsold, click sell one like this and redo it. Sometimes I'll even rework the title a touch or something like that. But man, it's amazing how quick those newly listed items will sell all of a sudden. Mm-hmm. It's wild. And I don't know why that's like that. But
it's algorithm
it's
things.
become an algorithmic weird place. You just got to figure out what the hacks are. That makes me sad, because a lot of people, like you go on some of those eBay forums and a lot of those people are just like, nothing's selling. I don't know what to do. And it's sad because you're like, yeah, it's not fair, And a lot of people just want to be able to list their stuff and sit back and relax, And even there's a marketplace called Poshmark, which is a really, really good one for selling clothing, especially. But that's a similar thing. My daughter sells on Poshmark, and I tell her all the time, stuff I've read, this is how you do well on it. And it's sad that I just started doing Poshmark a month ago because I had a lot of clothing items, and I've outsold her substantially with the same items. just because I'm following certain steps, ending listings, changing. I mean, I've even taken an item that's been sitting for a while, raised the price, and it's sold.
Yeah.
Or because sometimes they don't trust too cheap of a price. They're like, there must be something wrong with it. It's weird, but you got to play the game. And it's a little exhausting because not everyone's willing to hustle that hard, and they really shouldn't have to with a platform like that, especially with the fees. But anyway. So as far as your journey, your musical journey, it's a common thing that I run into with people that I have on this podcast is I find that a lot of them who live here in Nashville initially moved to Nashville with a particular reason or particular thing in mind, and find themselves doing either something very different, but in the same arena.
Yep.
Is that your story? Would you say that's your story too? Like, are you doing exactly what you moved to Nashville to do?
Yes and no. I'll give you that answer. That makes sense. I'm from Paducah, Kentucky.
Okay.
Which is 2 hours from Nashville.
Okay.
Western Kentucky. And I started taking guitar lessons when I was 4 years old. Yeah. So if people are familiar with Stephen Curtis Chapman, they know that artist, Christian music artist. His dad, he's from Paducah. His dad was my guitar teacher growing up.
Okay.
I'm the youngest guitar student that Herb Chapman Sr. has ever had in his life, and he's still 83 years old, I think, now, and he's still teaching guitar. And but all I've ever wanted to do was music. And so when I was 5 years old, my goal was I wanted to play electric guitar, lead guitar, for some artist on the Grand Ole Opry. That was when I was 5 years. I always remember that.
Wow.
That's what I wanted to do when I was 5.
See, most people want to stand in the circle. You just wanted to play guitar on the stage.
I didn't know about the circle at 5 years old. I just knew the Grand Ole Opry was cool, and that's what I wanted to do. But I always knew I wanted to be in music. I wanted to play music for a living, and that's all I've ever wanted to do. When I was, 16 and committed my life to Jesus, started writing worship music and leading worship in my youth group and college group and things like that. I went to college, Bible college, and all those different things. And then I finally moved here in 2000 to Nashville to pursue music. And at that point, I had a band in college, and I initially was hoping that we would all come together as a band to pursue the career. And everybody else had other things that they wanted to do, so we didn't do that. But I was coming regardless because I was going to do music.
And that overwhelms that can overwhelm people you want to do anything with. When you have that drive, that I'm doing this no matter what. Like, you definitely strike me as a guy very similar to me, willing, like, hey man, you're willing to burn the ship to take the island. Like there's no two ways about it, and that intimidates other people. Was that sort of kind of the way it was?
No, I wouldn't say that it was an intimidation thing. It's just everybody that was in that particular band had other career goals in mind. Like, I don't think that they had ever thought when we started the band, like, this is going to be a full-time career. I don't know if that was their, if they had the same long-term goal of doing music full-time that I had.
Like what I ran into with people trying to start bands early on in my thing was that a lot of people were like, well, I have this really good job. Like, they're just afraid, like they need the safety, so it's intimidating when they see a guy who's like, well, I'm doing this. I want you to come with me. I'm going to make sure it's successful. That's like, I'm going to go this route.
Yeah.
But
I don't know if I wouldn't say that was the case with my bandmates in that particular scenario, but I moved here anyway.
What year did you move here?
2000.
Oh, okay. So you've been here a while.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep. So it's 2021 as we record this.
Yeah.
So I've been here for 21 years.
Oh, wow. Okay. So I'm like super new to this town. Like, it gets a comparison.
Yeah, I've been around for a while.
Okay.
And so, I came here. I had an internship with an independent record label, Christian label. We did, conferences and seminars and things like that I helped out with. And then I was out touring. Started playing guitar for another Christian artist at the time. And
the glory days of this, the Christian music industry is the early 2000s.
Yeah, late 90s, early 2000s. Yeah. And so I was out playing for another artist. Did that for a couple of years. And and then I ended up moving away for about a year. Went out to Wilmington, North Carolina to do some acting stuff, and moved in with the family that I'd met here through one of those conferences and fell in love with. And so they became like family to me. So I went out there and did some stuff and was kind of, was a little lost in some ways. Some things didn't go the way that I thought they were going to go at the time, or as soon as I thought that they should. And
Yep.
I was frustrated, and, but I had these other opportunities I wanted to pursue. So I went out there, and, I loved my time out there and getting to do that. And eventually I moved back and thought, okay, I'm really going to go for it now.
It's funny you pursued acting because, I was, after COVID happened and everything, I was kind of like, you know what? Like, I'd like to be in a movie.
Yeah.
Like, I think that almost seemed like if I was going to try to do anything else, like that seems like a natural place to go to when, it's like, I know I want to do entertainment, maybe acting. That's interesting that you actually went toward the acting. What was it about acting that made you think that this is the route I want to go? Was an opportunity presented to you, or was it just an idea?
Well, I wasn't like pursuing it hardcore. I was doing, so Wilmington, North Carolina at the time, it's not now, but at the time, is considered Hollywood East. East Coast Hollywood East, something like that. It was the Hollywood of the East Coast is what it was considered. Tons of TV shows and movies were filmed in Wilmington and the surrounding areas. All the Muppets movies, like the Muppets Christmas Carol, the TV show Dawson's Creek, One Tree Hill, all those TV shows were filmed in Wilmington. Iron Man 3, tons and tons of movies and shows were out in that area. Screen Gems is the production company.
As a Marvel fan, we don't talk about Marvel, the Iron Man 3.
Oh, sorry.
we just
skip over that one.
Yeah, Sorry, Robert Downey Jr., but that was the worst Iron Man and probably the worst Marvel movie ever. But there's reasons, and he if anything, he saved it with his acting. But yeah, terrible movie.
Okay. Well, anyway, I keep hitting this microphone. I'm sorry. I apologize.
So,
so anyway, when I was out there, Dawson's Creek was like a huge show that was on at the time. And I loved that show. For whatever reason, I liked that show. And so we had opportunities. We went out there to tour because there's a family that lived in Wilmington that had come to one of these conferences with Embassy Music that I was interning for. Got to become really close with them. And so the artist that I was playing for at the time, we went out to do a tour out in that area and found out that that's where Dawson's Creek was filmed. And they always need background. They need extras. They need background actors to be in the scenes together, while they're shooting stuff. And so we're like, dude, we want to do that. So we went out and we got in, and it was super easy to get in as an extra. And they pay you a little bit to hang out and do all this stuff. And I love all that stuff. I love all the behind the scenes of how things are put together.
Yeah.
How they're made. And so I just ate it up. Like I'm just sitting there, like they're filming the scenes with all the main actors, and you're in the scene with them. But then when you're not, you're just sitting around waiting. So while everyone else is sitting around waiting, goofing off, playing games or doing whatever, I'm sitting around and I'm watching what the production guys are doing, what the PAs are doing, the lighting guys, the director. Because I always wanted to be a director. If I didn't do music growing up, I was probably going to go into directing. That was because I always did that kind of stuff in high school, photography and directing and video stuff. And so I just ate that stuff up. And so what was really cool about it was that some of those guys that were on the crew, they noticed that about me, that I was always kind of watching what was going on. And so whenever they would need, they needed extras in the scene, they would pull me in pretty quickly because they knew that I was paying attention and that I was interested in what was going on. I wasn't just there to hang out kind of stuff.
That's awesome.
So I always loved that kind of thing. So I did like the last 2 seasons of Dawson's Creek as a background extra guy. And I did like a Hallmark movie or something like that. So I never had any like speaking parts or whatever. But I mean, I had an agent and all those types of things.
Is there anything that's like, is there any particular season or episode that you clearly appear in? Like, you're like, yeah, that's me.
Well, I'm gonna spoil a major plot point. If you've never wanted to watch Dawson's Creek, you're like, man, I want to watch that show, and I've never done it. I'm going to ruin it for you. So Dawson's dad passes away,
Yeah.
He dies in a car accident, kind of a thing, in season 5. And so the funeral episode where they have his funeral and the wake or whatever, they're at his house. And so I'm in that episode, and I'm pretty prominent throughout. You'll see me. What's funny, because we went to the physical house that was supposed to be his house. So a lot of it shot on sound stages, right? You know, the living rooms and all that kind of thing. They got all the stuff's rebuilt on a sound stage. But then sometimes they would take you to the actual physical house that it was created after, that they would use in the shots for outdoor scenes or whatever. And this particular episode, we got to go to the actual house. And so we're filming inside the house and on the property and different things. And it's out by, the water, and which was what makes it was Dawson's Creek. It was like this backwater property that goes out to the ocean. And so my van, I had this Dodge Caravan, like 98 Dodge Caravan or something. And it's wild berry is the color. It's like this dark purpley color. And I had driven this, I'd toured in this van. I've been all over the place in it. It's 95. I think it was like a 95 van. Anyway, so I am out driving around Wilmington, North Carolina in this van, and it started having problems. It was like breaking down on me, and sometimes it wouldn't start.
Yeah.
And it's having issues. And so they needed people that were going to be in the episode to bring their cars, drive it onto the property for this scene. We're pulling in, and then later on, we're all going to pull back out. And that's like showing this montage thing, kind of fades in and fades out, all this kind of stuff. And I knew that this van was having problems. And I'm like one of the first ones that pulls into on the property, and they're filming this. And I pull in, and and it gets there, and it does like it's supposed to do. And I thought, man, at the end of the day, I'm going to have to drive this thing out, and I don't know if it's going to start. And I'm like scared to death because I mean you can't do that.
Right.
Like this is like tons and tons of money every time they're rolling film. It costs money, and it's expensive to do all this stuff. And so if they have to stop because of you're wasting their money, and you're going to get fired. You're never going to get asked back. And so, I thought I had to get in my car, and I thought, oh, please, Jesus, let this thing start up. And thankfully it did. It started up, and I was like, yes, and pulled out, and everything worked out well. But man, I was like nervous the whole day about that, because thinking, I thought this is going to be a disaster. And it worked out. But they did this montage, like I said, they wanted us leaving sort of the end of the day, the end of the wake, whatever.
Right.
We're all leaving, and they wanted everybody had to call out a number, and they would give you a number, and then when they call that number out, you would get up and you'd walk out and leave, and they're going to have you kind of like disappear. It's kind of like all fading out to just the main characters are left. And so we did that kind of stuff. And so, I'm throughout the episode. You'll see me pretty prominent throughout. That particular episode is one that sticks out to me the most. But it was fun. The other cool thing about the episode was when they had the actual funeral itself, they were filming that. We're out at this cemetery property, and all of a sudden the crew start freaking out. They had the minister there to do the service, but they didn't have a Bible.
Oh,
and you have to understand, in the Hollywood industry, most of these people are not believers.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a pretty harsh environment to be in. But I was a Christian artist, and some of these people knew that that's what I did. So anyway, they're freaking out. We need a Bible. We need a Bible. Does anybody have a Bible? I was like, I got one. Get this man to his car right now. They throw me into a van and just take off, man, across wherever it was to get my Bible and bring it back and let their guy use it in the scene. So my Bible is what one of the ministers using in this scene. That was cool. I got to sort of save the day.
Good thing. I mean, that's the early 2000s or mid 2000s.
Early.
I mean, nowadays, I don't think anyone would have. Very few would actually have a physical Bible, because at most, you got it on your phone.
You got your app,
yeah. But that's wild, man. That's really cool that you got to. I mean, and that's a cool thing, man. I feel like the more artists and the more people I have on here who sort of just were willing to. I mean, let's face it. Almost anything really cool that people get to do in their lives is either they just straight up asked, and it was like, yes. You'd be surprised how often the answer is yes, in some cases, but also just showing up. you showed up.
Yep.
You know, and that's sort of like we had Eric Nordoff on as a guest on here. He is Chrissy Nordoff's husband, and you know, pretty well known guy here in Nashville. But a lot of people, myself included, I didn't find out till he came on here, and like I found out as we're about to film that he was on an episode of Walking Dead, and he was actually like a really important figure in the fan base with a podcast he had and stuff. And you know, we found out he was actually got to be a walker on the show, and it all started with just showing up. They came to, you know, kind of to go see like the set and everything, and then it turned into like they were extras, and then, you know, they eventually got to be like put up in makeup and be zombies, like. And in your case, it sounds like, you know, you heard that something was filmed. Hey, they have casting calls for extras, and it sounded like you got to do something most people don't get to do.
Yeah.
And you showed up.
Yeah, well, one of the really cool things about the whole situation was that the company that you have to go through as an extra to get in to do that in that town, Fincannon and Associates was the casting company that you'd have to go through. You have to, you know, you had to have a headshot and whatever, and then submit that kind of stuff and go in, and they would pick you out or whatever. So, but Fincannon and Associates was 2 brothers and a sister that owned that company.
Yeah.
Mark Fincannon, who's one of the owners of it, we became friends, and he ended up marrying the family that I was living with, the mom and the daughter, and became like sister and mom to me. And he ended up marrying the mom.
Oh, okay.
So now, and they're like family to me. So the you know, Mark Fincannon and Sharon, and who now, you know, who co-own this company, the casting directing company, they're like dear family to me, you know, and all of that is because that one initial, you know, going out and doing that to begin with. And so, and they are strong believers. Like Mark and Sharon are really strong followers of Christ and a light in a very dark entertainment world, you know, because of that. And so, and I love, like, that's what's been so cool for me is that their family is so tight with mine. And, you know, so awesome. I get to have that relationship in a deeper level than most people get to have, which is really cool.
That's awesome.
But his, Mark's Fincannon's brother and sister, I think it's both of them, Lisa Mae, Fincannon. Anyway, they are casting directors for The Walking Dead.
Oh, that's cool.
They work on that show. Mark doesn't, but his sister, I want to say her brother does. If I forget, I apologize. But I know that they're connected to that show.
Yeah, I had Jack Vale on my show. He's a kind of a YouTuber, comedian guy, and he's amazing. He's a believer, and he's actually producing a movie. They're starting to film in February. It's a movie about the life of Carmen.
Oh yeah,
the Christian music artist. And man, you know, I said a couple times during the episode, like, hey, if you need because Carmen grew up in New Jersey, you know, and they're going to tell like his whole story, which actually involves in a little bit of some New Jersey mob stuff that he had to kind of had to deal with at one point.
You want to be in the mob, don't you?
I'm like, you know, and I'm just sitting here like, you know, you need a guy who's like, hey, I don't shine shoes no more. You know, you need a Joe Pesci, or you need like an angry stage manager guy, you know, who's like, come on, you went over your time again, you know, something. Let me give me my shot, you know. And he's just like, yeah, we'll let you know. It's like, okay, but no, I think for me that would be a really cool thing to get to do. Would be in a movie. I think a movie looks more fun than maybe a TV show. But
I don't know.
I mean, they make it look fun when they do these montages of like outtakes where everyone's laughing and all that stuff.
Yeah,
you know,
I haven't done like a full-fledged movie. I've done like the Hallmark movie, TV movie type stuff. I've been in one of those. But I did the show Nashville here.
Oh, okay.
I was on that show for the last 2 seasons of it. I think it was 2, maybe 3.
Yeah.
I think it was 2.
I really only watched the last 2 seasons
Actually,
of it.
I think there were 6 seasons, so I may have been like the last 3.
Yeah.
I was in the last season of the ABC version, and then it went over. They canceled it, and then went over to CMT.
CMT, right?
So I think there was 2 seasons on that. So I guess I was in 3 seasons. But I was in that, and I was technically considered an actor, but I was in the bands. I played in
Okay.
different bands for the main characters.
You know, I seem to remember, I think you might actually post it on Facebook. Like, I think you might have even posted a clip at one point.
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, I would have.
Because, you know, I gotta say that it was, I do kind of miss that show. There were very compelling parts of that show. Then there was some parts where I'm just like it's not, the music business is not like that. You know, I get a little frustrated sometimes watching. Like, for argument's sake, it's like, hey, we're gonna start a band. Cool, let's start a band. And next thing you know, they're all on a tour bus. Like, wait a minute.
Some things
Hold on. Yeah.
progress a little quickly for
Yep.
storyline, sake. But
Totally.
I'll say this: the storylines are what they are. But the purpose of Nashville as a TV show that really highlighted was the music industry itself.
Right.
And how the music business worked and how the musicians worked and things like that. And the guys who worked on that show were amazing.
Yeah.
A guy named Colin, who was like our supervisor, musician supervisor, basically, on set. And what's cool as a musician getting to do that TV show, it was frustrating, but it was also awesome, is they would send you the song that you had to do. So I would play I'd play in one of the characters. I'd be in their band. And then that might get shifted around to where I have to be in a different person's band. And they didn't always like doing that. So every now and then a few of us got to do that, but not many people would really get to do that very often.
Yeah. I mean, that is sort of it's not like there's very few people that play for like 6 people. They'll maybe like, hey, I'll play bass for this guy and this guy. Like, it's not unheard of, and I can understand why they didn't want to do it with everybody.
They wanted to keep it. If you're with this I keep hitting this microphone. If you keep hitting, if I don't keep hitting, if you're playing with this one artist, they want you to be with that artist.
Yeah.
And they want everybody to have their own band, kind of a deal. But so you would get 24 hours tops, if you're lucky. They would send you the song to listen to. You had to memorize the song. There were no charts.
Right.
They would send you the full version of the song, and then they would stem it out so that you would hear a version. You'd hear everything, but then the guitars would be really loud for the electric player or the acoustic player, the bass. Each instrument got pulled out.
Yeah.
So that whatever you were playing, you could hear what it is that you were doing. But you had to learn the parts. Okay, drums are one thing, acoustic is one thing. Keys are one thing. You never actually saw the actual keyboard player.
That's true.
Playing anything, right?
Yeah.
But regardless of what instrument you were playing, you had to know it exactly.
Yeah.
There was no way around it. See, if you watch TV shows, if you're watching a TV show that's got a musician, a band, or whatever playing in it, watch and see what they're doing. Even if you're not a musician, but you've got some rhythm to you and you understand how music works. Yeah. And you watch some TV shows where someone's playing something and they're, doing and they're like, and they're just kind of whatever, boom, boom. It's like that is not lining up at all whatsoever.
I mean, that's the Macy's Thanksgiving Day Parade. I mean, it's exactly like that.
Yeah, but with Nashville, you had to be exact. Yeah. And one of the reasons they would say that, and they told us this, is because Brad Paisley watches this show.
Yeah,
they want the musicians and the people that are big wigs in the industry, they want to know that everything they're doing is exactly as close as possible as it can possibly be.
Yeah.
And which was amazing. That's what I loved about the show. It was hard to do sometimes because some of the parts you'd play, every verse was different. And you got less than 24 hours to learn it and memorize it, get on stage in front of a bunch of cameras, where they're spending money, and you got to play it right, because if you start screwing it up, then you're in trouble. So it was pressure, but it was so much fun. I loved doing that show, and it was sad when it ended because we don't get to do those things any longer.
Yeah, I was frustrated at a storyline they had with this guy. I think if you remember the last season with this guy Brad Maitland.
Yeah,
and how I don't know
the mean record.
The mean record producer,
record label guy. Yeah,
just because he feels like it, he's going to take away her son. And I mean, listen,
it's a soap opera.
It's a soap opera, and a lot of that stuff. I'm sorry, I don't care who you are. It's incredibly hard to get a judge to take a kid away from a mom. The things she was worried about, and even the things they actually did in the show, were like, I lost custody of my son. That doesn't happen. It just doesn't. It just
But
doesn't.
that's okay.
Trust me.
You're supposed to you're supposed to
Yeah.
you know,
And then and then like Deacon pulls him off his son who he's like hitting, and he smiles and goes, "Did you just assault me?" Like, first off, you have no witnesses. Just because you said it happened doesn't mean it did, but they're dangling us over his head. Get out of here. Come on. That's not real life. And if it was, you know what? Did you just assault me? No, now I did, and take care of business, But I don't know. I get it. I totally understand. I don't mean to sound critical. I don't know. I just wish I like reality a lot, and I like slightly altered reality, and just some of those things on those shows, I get frustrated, but I also learned something. That some of these shows intentionally want people like me to be like, that doesn't make sense. Like, they actually want that. They want you to say that. Why? And it hooks me in. What stupid thing they're going to do next? It gets me to watch it.
Get to keep watching.
I've gotten roped into shows that I've blasted my wife. Why do you watch this? And before you know it, I'm a fan too. Like my wife was a big fan of Vampire Diaries for a long time. And she used to watch a show called Supernatural on CW.
Which was filmed in Wilmington.
What was it?
I think so.
Supernatural's filmed in Vancouver.
Is it? Okay.
Yeah.
Sorry.
But
I didn't watch
but
it.
you may have a point with the other show. I'm not actually.
A lot of those things got moved to Atlanta. So what I was saying earlier about with Wilmington is no longer considered Hollywood East because that it dropped for whatever reason. Well, I think it's because of tax credits and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
Everybody left Wilmington and everything went to Atlanta.
Right.
So Finn Cannon Associates, all that stuff.
Yeah, a lot of shows
is
are in Atlanta
Atlanta
now. The Residents film there now,
Yep.
and but it was anyway. Like, I've made fun of my wife because I'm just like, I have this joke because a lot of those CW shows, especially when it's the brotherly thing, it goes through this for a couple episodes. I love my brother. I die for my brother. Then like next batch of episodes, I hate my brother. I can't have anything to do with my brother. The next thing you know is like, well, like, my brother won't listen to me. I love him. I need to fix this. And then it's like, then it flips around. I love my brother too, but I can't talk to him. He doesn't understand. Back to, I love my brother. It's like, that's all those shows are.
But here's the thing. It's a formula.
Right. But see, I would make fun of them.
Yeah.
And then next thing you know, I'm excited to see when they're going to go back to the I hate my brother thing.
Yeah.
Before you know it, like, I am a huge fan of the show Supernatural. And like, I've literally watched every episode. I'm one of those. And anyone who is a fan of Supernatural, if you're a fan, you know that I'm one of those fans that probably just walk around my house randomly going, Sammy. It's what you do when you're a fan. It's stupid, but I've gotten sucked in. And man, like, it's interesting how well crafted some of these shows that had longevity, like Dawson's Creek, Walking Dead. There's a formula they follow that makes, or even Nashville for a while. I don't know why Nashville, I don't want to say that it failed, but it kind of, I don't know why it lost steam, because it felt like that show I think it had an opportunity to do something huge. And I almost would have loved to see that show almost like, it would have been cool to see maybe if they did like, maybe if it wasn't called necessarily Nashville, but maybe they call it something else. And maybe like season 1 or maybe half of season 1 was Nashville. The other half was LA. Maybe another half is another music scene, maybe Seattle. And, almost do like that, like a lot of those weird romantic comedies where there's a whole bunch of, like, there's this storyline, that storyline, all separate, but something somehow ties it together.
Yeah.
So maybe they could have done something like that to keep it interesting.
Well, maybe somebody should do that in the future.
Yeah.
That's a good pitch. That's a good idea.
Yeah.
I think there's a cool storyline that you could do with something like that.
Yeah. I mean, because you have producers who will go out to LA and work for a while on, on a One Republic project, which actually there's a lot of people in town here who do a lot of stuff on One Republic, and then so Nashville and LA sort of coming together in that regard. And then like during the 90s, you had, I know Seattle bore a lot of that grunge stuff, but that might be an interesting, take on it, because what I enjoyed was the character. I don't know why, but for some reason, the character of Deacon, I think just the dude was always just a heartbroken guy. Always. It's like deep down. His dad issues, his anger issues really like I can kind of identify, not that I ever had like the crazy anger issues like he did, but I can identify with where, usually anger issues underneath that is sadness pushing that to the surface, and I can definitely identify with that in a huge way. So the character of Deacon, just like there was a kindred in a lot of ways and a lot of his struggles. And, it was really enjoyable to kind of see his story and see him grow his character development throughout the seasons, and then just, when it was kind of him and his daughters, like being a dad of two daughters, it's like some of the little things that he went through. It's like, yeah, I get it, Deacon.
Yeah.
And and the actor is one heck of a nice guy and a very talented musician. We ran into him at a mall one day, and now my wife was like, "Oh my gosh, that's the guy from Nashville." And my daughters, which I didn't know at the time, he had played a dad on one of these kids shows. So they were just like, "Oh my gosh, that's the dad from Hey Jesse." And I didn't know that.
Do you know what else he was on?
He was on the Whose Line Is It Anyway as Chip.
Anyway.
Yeah.
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 He's like super funny
yeah.
guy.
To me though, his face has definitely changed a bit as he's aged, but I used to think he was sort of the like a knockoff Jim Carrey in a way, because he can make faces and look like Jim Carrey. And it was like, oh wow, okay, I get it. But yeah, very funny guy and a very super just a great talent all around.
He was super nice. Yeah, I got to meet him once. We took a picture like that. We were doing the season premiere for the last season, and he walked by when we were rehearsing. Yeah. And so he came over and talked to us and, hey, let's all get a picture and stuff. And that was cool. So
no, super cool dude, man. And, I think it's been great to see a lot of he does a lot for charity. I mean, we went to one of his events here recently, and I don't remember all the artists, but it was crazy. I think it was at like Third and Lindsley, and it wasn't a super packed house, but it was pretty neat. The guy who plays "There's a Rumor Going Around," that song, like that guy like did a surprise set, and that was kind of neat. It's like, oh, this is a hit on the radio, and this guy's just here playing an acoustic version of it. That was neat.
That's what's great about Nashville is that guys who have hit songs all over the place, or as a writer, as an artist, whatever, they just show up in Nashville at these little hole in the wall dive. Not Third and Lindsley's not hole in the wall dive, but these local places that are not arenas or giant theaters, but these small little clubs, whatever, and they show up into these little events all the time. Like that's what Nashville's known for.
My favorite like Nashville kind of vibe thing that has happened was I was at it was thrown together last minute to help out, but I think it was Mark from what was the band Bleach. He was, I think they were looking to adopt, and they needed funds to make that happen pretty quickly, and it was thrown together really fast. But Bleach was actually going to like reunite for this one night thing.
I used to go to church with those guys.
Yeah, and so they did it as a fundraiser where Even Mercy Me was performing. I think Rhett Walker, Rhett Walker and Plum. And it wasn't like hugely attended. I mean that's sadly most of these Christian things that happen in Nashville. It's not like all of a sudden it's like, oh my gosh, the doors are busting out. But there was a good amount of people there, but it was it felt super private. But it was interesting because it was held at this place that I remember I sent a picture to somebody or a video, and someone's like, why does it look like they're playing at a high school talent show? Because that's exactly what the stage looked like. It looked like a high school auditorium kind of thing. None of the bells and whistles, none of that craziness, but it was awesome to see these bands sort of do these stripped down, like, look, we don't have tracks. It was just them playing some of their songs very organically, and it was awesome. Yeah. Like, that was cool, and that's always cool with that. I mean, even you go to some of the writers' rounds and you find out you wrote that song. Wow, like so, I mean, you'll hear an artist or a songwriter play. Well, we wrote it like this. They change it like this when they cut it, and you hear the originals. Yep. It's a pretty great place to live. I mean, and I don't always love it because of the traffic.
Oh my gosh! Yeah, let's not talk about the traffic part. Let's keep it on. Let's keep this on a positive thing.
Yeah, about to trigger you. I get triggered too, man.
Now I will say this about the whole songwriter round type thing with Life Fest, with the festival that I got to help work on this. We brought to Nashville this summer. In 2021 for the first time,
which you got me on, and I'm super grateful for that.
Absolutely. I was glad to get to do it because I got to do so with Life Fest. For people who don't know what Life Fest is, it's the largest Christian music festival in the country, based out of Oshkosh, Wisconsin.
Yeah.
And they decided this past year that they're going to bring it to Nashville and as a second festival. And so it's Tennessee's first ever major Christian music festival. Which everybody's like, are you really? Are you serious? Is that right? Because
Yeah.
this is the Christian music capital of the world. And for whatever reason, this is the first one after all these years that they've finally done it. Anyway, so the director and I have known each other for 20 plus years. And so he asked me to come in and be a part of it. And so I got to host one of the stages. I was performing, leading worship, but I got to book a lot of the bands. So I was able to get you on,
Yeah.
which I was excited to do that. But I also hosted, they asked me if I would host a songwriters round. So I booked these songwriters, these hit songwriters in the Christian music world and some in the country music world, because they kind of work together on some different things. And it was amazing.
Yeah.
Just to hear, because you hear the main stage, you got Michael W. Smith performing, right? But earlier in the day, at the writers round, you got the guy who co-wrote the song with Michael W. Smith, hearing the original version. This is what we were doing when we first wrote it, right? So you're hearing the demo, quote unquote, version, original idea, and then later on you get to hear the final product,
right,
at the same festival, which is a really cool. Yeah, cool concept.
I wish I would have been. I wasn't able to make it over there because we were busy getting ready for ours. But you had one of the writers round with some of my favorite people in Nashville, people that I've learned directly from, friends of mine. You had a round, I think, that had James Teeley.
Yep.
It had Ross King.
Yep.
I know I don't know who else you had on it, but offhand. But I mean, there's just some of those people are just like. Those are people, if they're ever, and they don't play a ton out here in Nashville, but if they do, go check it out because they're so good.
Oh, yeah.
They're just so, Teeley doesn't give himself enough credit. I mean, I wish Teeley was an artist. He's just, you put him on a microphone, the man knows how to talk. He can sing like nobody's business, and he just sort of doesn't seem to like the spotlight, though.
That's fine.
Yeah. But he's so good.
He's an amazing songwriter.
Yeah.
And an encourager, and he's a teacher. He's a professor, I believe, and teaches music, different things in music and publishing and stuff like that. So that's kind of just where his heart is. But he's an amazing songwriter, and so get to go bring him in to do certain things like that. And so that's been exciting. He's going to be on my podcast as well. And Ross has been on it. Yeah. Which I know you've had him on this show. And
yeah. Teeley's one of those guys that are difficult to get in contact with. At least for me, it has been. Yeah. I mean, I'm sure he gets 1.5 million people like me who are like, can we write together? So maybe I'll try get him on the podcast. I'd love to have Teeley in because, I mean, that man, again, anytime I'm around him, I smile a lot because it's everything he says to you is real, it's true, it's right. And he's kind of been there, done that with a lot of things, and he's got a song that he's played at a couple of these, some of these like songwriting camps that he's kind of helped run. He probably would be mad I mentioned it, but he wrote a song. I don't necessarily know the name of it, but it has to do with this flight attendant or
he
Luana.
Yes, he played it at the festival, and it was like the closing song of the writer round.
And what makes it even better is the fact that he says that he wrote her the song. He wrote the song, and it's not a mean song, but it's not nice either.
Yeah, it's hilarious.
It's definitely a tongue in cheek. But he says he gave her the CD and he never saw her again after that. And it's like, I mean, it's funny, but it's not funny. Like what could have happened, Yeah. And it's almost, what it almost reminds me of, if you've ever seen the viral videos that go around about, they're called Zach Morris's Trash, and it kind of rips about, it totally rips these episodes of Saved by the Bell about what a terrible person that the character Zach Morris actually was, and they're actually right. You're like, wow, yeah, he did like try to sell Screech for alien research, and what a bad guy. He's not a good person. It's right, but there's a thing at the end of a lot of these where they're like, yep, and this girl that he used for his own personal gain, and tried to make money off her by putting her in beauty pageants. She's never seen again. She probably killed herself.
Oh,
And
gosh.
it's not funny. It's not, but it's funny. And it's like, so I know like in private, Teely, you know, like I remember, I think me and one other guy were like, yeah, man, you might have killed her, dude. And he's just like, no, stop. I know. He's like, and he goes, it's funny, but it's not funny. We're like, I know it's not funny, but it's like, what could have happened? Or for all you know, she was set to retire and that was her parting gift. The last thing she ever got from all her years of service of, you know, saving everyone's life by not letting guitars go on the plane at gate 25.
That was the whole point, was that
Right.
she wouldn't let him take his guitar on to the plane. It had to go underneath.
Right.
And it's like,
And he
Delta?
Yeah, it was Delta.
Which is horrible with guitars. They like constantly trash the guitars and that kind of stuff.
And just for clarity, who anyone who doesn't know, the song makes up a story about how she met this singing guitar player and he would sing her these beautiful songs and play guitar, and then he broke her heart. Right. And sort of like her revenge. And the chorus sort of says like, you know, like mean old Luana, please let me bring my guitar on the plane and all this other stuff. And it's not meant to be mean, but it's more of like I would put it more out of like, it's snarky. Let's put it that way. It's not mean. It's more of a snarky song. And meant to be in a comedic way, which, let's face it, sometimes being a little silly gets your way. And I think maybe he was hoping she would have listened to it, and the next time he saw her went, your song was so funny, but he never saw her again. And I still think that I know that bothers him. Like, what, like, your mind has to go to, oh my gosh, did I ruin her life? You know, but
I doubt it. But
I mean,
I understand.
He at one point was like, I don't want to play that song anymore. And so I got everyone to chant Luana, Luana at one of the things, and he was not happy with me for starting. Hey, thanks for tuning into the podcast. I hope you're enjoying this episode. If you're watching on YouTube or listening on a streaming platform, please be sure to subscribe, like, or follow so that you can stay up to date with the latest episodes. Also, drop some comments or feedback in the comments section. We'd love to hear from you guys. Once again, thank you so much for the support of the Tom Golly Official Podcast.
Well, he did it. He closed the writers round at the festival this summer.
Yeah, I saw him. I played a writers round. I'm so blessed to share the stage with Michael Farron at
Michael.
Michael's amazing, and one of my heroes. And Michael actually took the time to have breakfast with me one time. I was going to a lot of really weird industry stuff at the time. I was so new. I didn't know what to make of any of it, because you could probably attest to this. Probably not many people are willing to talk about this on a podcast either, but there is this genuine fear of getting blacklisted in this industry. I mean, that was something that, and it's not, and I haven't necessarily seen it, but you hear about it. You hear the horror stories, that, someone made this person mad, and, now like all doors are closed, and you hear those stories. I haven't experienced any of those.
I have not either.
I mean, I know that there are definitely, they say bad gas travels fast in a small town, and I have seen that. I have seen where, like one person maybe rubs someone the wrong way who's very well connected. A lot of people might have I don't know about that guy, and that can be overcomeable. But I didn't know, because I had come from a camp of, working with some people who had been kind of very jaded. A lot of things just didn't go their way. And, when that happens, there's a lot of warnings and look out fors that you get from people like that. So before you know it, I'm like in a really tough spot, not sure how to properly handle it, because I was, I always try to be good to everybody, and everyone hopefully in turn is good to me. And this situation, I was really worried, like I might burn bridges, or I don't know what the right call is. And someone like Michael, who just seems to, he admits, I've made a lot of mistakes. I've had a lot of wrong, and he would share a lot of this stuff in these seminars, and it was like, I think he'll understand. And he actually took time out of his very busy day to meet with me and have breakfast, and spoke a lot of life into what I was trying to do, spoke a lot of wisdom into my situation, and I left feeling like, okay, like, like I had a much more confidence in that particular season. And man, he just, he really spoke into something, because a guy like him, you'd think, man, with all his successes and, you know, the platinum records, or maybe not platinum, but like the gold records and the Dove Awards,
Yeah,
you'd
he's got lots.
you'd think a guy like him would, you know, he knows who he is. He's got no problems, man. He's great. But for him to look me in the eyes and say, man, you know what? I used to think that I was against, everyone in this industry was against me and I was against them, and it was me competing against them. And he taught me right away. One of the earliest things I've learned being in this town was the only enemy is in the mirror. That's it. Like, no, you know, no one's against you, you know, and when someone else wins, you didn't lose,
Right.
you know, and that was probably the best thing anyone's taught me, that to this day, literally, I remind myself all the time, like, wait a minute, they got the gig that I wanted.
Mm-hmm.
Dude, that didn't hurt me. It didn't, you know, it didn't, you know, they didn't win and I lost. No, they got what I wanted this time. Man, I'm a support of that.
Yeah.
Because, man, they earned it. It's awesome. And I'm just gonna do better. And, you know, I went through that even before I moved to Nashville. I went through a very similar thing. Me and a friend of mine both went, we both entered this contest. We showed up. We both sang the national anthem. And he got picked. I didn't. You know? And the funny thing was, they asked me, because they were like, because he went first and crushed it. I went up first and did all right. Wasn't as good as him. Just wasn't my day. And they had asked me, they were like, wow, he was really good, man. They go, and I was like, yeah, I know, but it wasn't good as Maurice, man. He was awesome, wasn't he? And they're like, wait, like, are you actually trying to convince us that someone else was better? I'm like, well, it was. He's amazing. They're like, so you choose him if it wasn't you? I go, absolutely. You better choose him. They did. And I meant it. Mm-hmm. And for him, it was a dream. It was a dream to sing the national anthem at a ball game. And it wasn't really a dream of mine. It was like, sounds fun to do. You want to go? And we went together. And it was awesome. I admit, part of me was like, he beat me. I sucked. He didn't, right? Mm-hmm. And then when they announced the winners, they used his picture of him singing on the winner thing. And I kind of felt like, there was part of me that was like, man, salt on the wound. I lost. You know, and for a while in my mindset, privately, I was like, I got to be better than Maurice. No, I got to be better than me, you know? And the following year, we both went, the following year, we both went. And I won the contest. I was the number one. He didn't place, you know? And yeah, and I got to sing on 4th of July. I got to sing national anthem and God Bless America. Like, it was huge. Because see, I realized, I remember changing my mindset. Stop trying to sing better than Maurice. Sing it better than I ever did. And that's what won me the contest. And so that's the lesson. And I remember telling Michael that story, and he goes, there you go. That's putting that into practice. You being better than you.
Right.
You are your own worst enemy, no one else. And that's a big thing, I think. And I know when I was on your podcast, I kind of wish I would have talked about this too.
I'm sitting there thinking that. I was like, man, I wish we would have talked about that.
Because,
that's so good.
I mean, that's been a huge lesson, is being me. Like, even with this podcast, like, you know, I mean, my biggest influence for podcasting is not a Christian podcast. It's a Joe Rogan podcast. I love how the conversations are real. They're about whatever, wherever it goes. And really, they're ultimately about the guest. They're not really about me per se. Even though sometimes I'll share a story with the guest that kind of applies to what we're talking about and things. But it's like that's where the true freedom in life is just competing with yourself on a daily basis, weekly basis, monthly basis. And again, all that to say, Michael Farron really spoke words of wisdom that I will probably continue to try to put into practice and continue to preach on. All because the man spent a couple of hours out of his day to have breakfast with me for no gain of his own. Like, that's a heart, man, that I just can't speak highly enough about the guy and how grateful I am that he took time out of his day to meet with a nobody artist who just wanted, hey, I just need someone who, like you, I just feel like I need to get wisdom from you. And he said yes.
Yeah, Michael's awesome, and we've written together, and so good friends with him. And actually, he came out and played the writers round.
Yeah,
he might have been on that same one with James that particular day, I think.
Oh, put those two guys together, and it's gold, man. They're just so good together, those guys.
And for people that are watching that are interested in music and this kind of thing, it's like, if you're wanting to come and do music for a living in Nashville, or really anywhere, but especially in Nashville. What Michael did for you, most people, most musicians that are further down the road than us, that have done this for decades and are really, really successful and whatever, most of them are willing to do that same thing. They're willing to take time out and come have breakfast or lunch and just give advice and listen and, and encourage newer guys that are just kind of getting into
and
it.
if they won't have coffee or breakfast, what you do is you start a podcast.
Right.
And
you invite them on.
You invite them on. No.
No, and it's true. I mean, I'll be honest with you, and I will say that doing my podcast has been beneficial in some of those areas. I wouldn't say it's intentional necessarily that for those, not that I'm looking for those things.
Yeah, it's not the primary objective, but it's a byproduct.
It is a byproduct that you get when you get to do these things. And you get to build relationships that you would not normally get to have.
Right.
And it opens up some doors and some opportunities that you didn't expect.
Now, let me ask
potentially.
You've been doing the podcast a while.
Yep.
Have you ever had an episode that you're kind of like midway through it? I mean, probably during mine where you're like, I made a mistake.
What am I doing here?
I mean, have you ever been like, oh, okay, this guest isn't quite what I thought it was going to be, or like to where you were like, kind of like, dang it, what did I do?
No, I have not.
Yeah, I haven't either.
I have not.
Yeah, I mean,
they've all been amazing.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm super grateful for every guest that's been on. And what's cool about mine, I don't know if we talked about this earlier or not, I can't remember. But mine it's not just having an artist on or just having a songwriter on. The focus of You Can Make a Living in the Music Industry is because it's a music industry. There are multifaceted parts to the business that a lot of people don't even know exist.
Right.
There is someone who works in the licensing department at BMI or ASCAP or CSAC or whatever. They're in the mailroom at RCA Records. Whatever it is, they're making a paycheck. They are in the music business. It might not be something that they necessarily like or that gets a lot of flash that people know about.
Yeah.
Because we all see the artist on the radio or on the TV or hear them on the radio, or the songwriter who created the song that we're listening to and memorizing now as part of our lives. But those are the things you always think of. Or you got the producer who put it all together. Those are really the three things that everybody thinks of.
Okay.
Right?
Yeah, yeah.
But that's a fraction of the industry.
Right.
You got all the record label executives, you got the publishing company, you got the marketing, you got the radio guys, you've got the booking agents, the people who work for the booking agents, the people who do the advertising that goes out to the magazine, the radio magazines, music magazines, whatever. You got CCM magazine or you got Songwriter magazine, whatever it is. It doesn't matter what. But then you get into, like we talked about earlier, the sync music, that kind of stuff. You got, you're working in the movie and TV industry, but you're doing it from the music perspective. So you're part of the music industry that is furnishing music to other things.
Yeah.
So
yeah, I mean,
there's so much to it.
That's why I think there's a lot, and there's a lot of freelancing opportunities that are available for people who want to make money. In with things in the industry. I mean, you got
photographers,
music
photographers.
Yeah. Which, and to me though, it's so crazy. I mean, I don't know, like some of the prices of some things that are out there that people actually pay those prices are kind of weird to me sometimes, I mean, like, I hit up somebody recently. It was just like, they had posted about how they do album artwork, and I do most of my own. I mean, a couple, what I have done is I've like gone on Fiverr and found someone, and they gave them a couple of ideas, and they've helped me knock it out the park. It's like, yeah, I love that. But man, I can't believe like there are people who charge like they want $1,000 for one image of an album cover. It's like, huh?
But those people have earned.
Oh yeah, I'm definitely not saying.
I understand that. I've got a very good friend of mine who is a music photographer. He is like one of the. He's done Willie Nelson, Merle Haggard. He's done the big, the legends and all that kind of stuff. But it's not the only thing he does. It's not just music. He's also doing, magazines and advertising, all that kind of stuff. So it's just like anything else. Everything is. I mean, when I buy a guitar, it's just. I don't know if this will make sense or not, but I'm going to try to make it make sense. I used to work at a pizza place here in town.
Pizza analogies. That's how that's the way to teach me, my man. I love it.
So, but I was telling my manager, she was asking me about my guitars. And I told her, or we were talking about that. And she was talking, because she rode bikes. She was like I don't know if she's a professional bike rider, but she was like heavy into it. Always riding bikes, like cross country type stuff. And I asked her how much her bike was, and she was like $4,000. I was just like, oh my gosh, $4,000 for a bike? She's like, well, how much is your guitar? I was like, never mind. I understand, because my guitars are $3,000 or $4,000, whatever it is, and I've got multiple ones. So I understand that. It's like, okay, whatever it is that you do for a living, and that's what you're putting your career into, you know, like the equipment that you're using, you want the top quality of whatever it is.
Sure.
And so when you're an artist and you're wanting, your music is going to go out and it's going to compete alongside Garth Brooks and whoever else, and you want, and Garth Brooks and their people are paying you as a photographer so much money, then that's what you're worth,
right?
You know, and it didn't happen overnight. They had to work their way up to it, just like we all do, and no matter what we're doing.
Oh yeah,
so but I understand. I had completely. Now the question is, does a person that's charging $1,000, are they worth $1,000?
Right.
Some of them yes, some of them no. But just like anything else, it's like, okay, is it worth paying me so much money, or paying you so much money to go play a concert somewhere, you know, compared to Mercy Me or Stephen Curtis Chapman or whoever else. It's like, or some nobody that is just getting started, not nobody, but someone who's just getting started that nobody knows of yet, which we all used to be that person. You know, it's like, how can you pay, you know, Mercy Me however many thousands upon thousands of dollars to do their show? Well, they didn't always make that money. Right. They used to make $500 to play a show, whatever it was when they first started out. But over time, they've built that career to where they're worth that now. Yeah. Plus, they've got 15 people, 20 people they got to They got to.
But I mean, to be fair, like with that analogy, in that case, you're going to bring in a band that can sell out a football stadium at this point in their career. You know, I mean, it's certain states, you know, where, like I said, my thing was like, this was like digital art for like a single, like, hey, you're making me this thing. Now, I get it for that kind of pricing, where what they'll do sometimes is like, okay, you're talking about an album, so 10, 12 songs, kind of break it down with like, if you factor that in per song, because that's going to be the same icon for each one. It's not that much money, break it down like that. But when it's a single, it's kind of like, I don't know if I want to spend that on a, you know, not saying it's not worth it, but it
just depends.
I think, you know, to be fair, it's worth it to the right person with the right situation, you know? And I think the problem that we went into in Nashville is there's a lot of freelancing that goes on from people who've been doing things in a while, and they're kind of looking for another stream of income. And and not that this is necessarily a bad thing to do from the, you know, not that this is a bad thing to do. Like, okay, you're in town, you're trying to make connections and relationships. So cool. It's worth it to me to spend, you know, way more to be able to have access to a person that I would love to connect with, you know, in order to make that connection, and then it's worth the money. But like a guy like me who already, like if I already know you, you know, we're already buds, like, you know, if I wanted to write with you or get together with you, or, you know, hey, let's do something collaborative, like we already could, that extra is not worth to me, like for someone like me and where I'm at, you know?
Sure.
But for somebody new who's like, hey, I'd love to find a reason to work with that person to be able to connect, then yeah, it's absolutely worth paying what they're offering, you know? I personally, and I'm not saying that it's a bad thing or even that it's quote overpriced, but it's like, you have to kind of weigh the benefits, you know? It's like, I mean, there are producers that I know, we're friends, where I'm like, I don't know that I want to pay their rate, you know, because ultimately that rate would gain you access that I kind of already have. So it's like, what's the benefit? Unless I feel like this song, that's the guy. That's the guy who's going to make this song everything it could be. And I think that's the struggle. And I think since that's a different topic, you know, picking a producer is definitely, I'm sure you can, as a producer yourself, you probably have heard demos and been like, yeah, I'm not the guy for that song.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I think it's an interesting thing. I think that, the freelance, and to circle back to ultimately what we were talking about, is that there's a lot of freelance opportunities for people who want to, maybe it's not your main thing, but it's a side thing where, hey, I'm here to be an artist, but I'm actually pretty good at taking photos. So I might be able to contact some bands and be like, hey, I'd love to I can take some photos for you. Shoot, even if you did it for free, it's a way to gain access and gain some friends, start out that way. There's, again, a lot of freelance opportunities that can turn into very lucrative things. And networking's huge. You can really utilize that stuff.
Networking is the key to this town.
Yeah.
And we've talked about that a bunch of my podcasts, how relationships and networking are probably the two most important things. And you network because you build relationship. You build relationship. It kind of goes both ways. It depends on, if I'm saying that correctly, when you're networking, people are networking because they want to build a relationship with somebody, right? They're trying to gain access, like you're talking about, to somebody with the hopes of building a relationship and a friendship and whatever.
And it's challenging in this town because, I think a lot of us, myself included, like I lived on Long Island, and, a lot of the networking, if you will, and the relationships that were built were all very organic. Here, most of the relationships are monetized. They start out as a monetized business relationship that, sometimes feels like, man, I'm going to be friends with this person forever. And then the project's over and it's like, what happened? They don't text me back anymore. Or, things like that. That's something I think when people come to this town, they need to have a little bit of a realistic expectation of how. And the idea, because people always say networking, and I always hear it, and I know we talked about it just a few minutes ago. I feel like it's one of the worst ways to network of, hey, I just moved to Nashville. Would you be down to grab a cup of coffee? I don't feel like that's a good idea. Like, I know that people suggest doing it, but I found that doing it can instantly put you in a category to some of these people who get hit up a lot of, complete rookie, complete noob. I say, there's let's call him an internet guru, if you will, but there's a guy named Grant Cardone. And if you're an entrepreneur, you probably know who he is. But he quoted one time, and I heard him say this. He may not have originated the quote, but man, huge game changer for anyone who hears it. It's, listen, if you want to get invited if you can't get invited to the table, serve water. And it's like, well, what do you mean by that? It's like, well, because, because some people try to, and if you're in Nashville, hey, if I can't get a seat at the table, I'll buy my way on, or I'll manipulate my way on, or some Christians will go, hey, I'm just going to pray my way on. And sure, prayer, that's a great idea too, but serve water. So what I mean by is, instead of hitting up an artist and say, hey, can we grab coffee? Or like, I actually had somebody cold call me recently, some kid from Florida. Hey, I'm an artist, man. I was wondering if there's any opportunities I can get out there, and I want to play shows. Is there any opportunity? You're cold calling me, asking me to take you on the road for you. It's probably not a good idea. Maybe you'll get lucky. Maybe someone will be like, hey, I was looking for somebody to call me randomly and take on the road. But my feeling on the matter is like, man, instead, you should be calling or hitting up and saying, hey, I know you're an artist. I just moved to Nashville. And these are some skills that I have. If there's any way I can help you, I'd love to maybe come take photos. I can do sound. I just love to show up and help. Yeah. You are more likely to get someone to go, well, man, thanks. We're good. We're good on that, man. And maybe if they ask you a question, like, where'd you come from, or anything? Oh, dude, they're actually interested in you. Maybe now ask, well, look, if you don't need my help, maybe we can get some coffee. At least I can, pick your brain a little bit. And, again, down the road, you ever needed help, I'm here. That's a better avenue. Because I wish I would have known that when I first got here, to show, because I didn't hear that quote until about 2 years ago, and it changed my world. I went, whoa, wait a minute. How can I instead of me going, hey, can you help add value to me?
Right.
How can I add value to you? Yeah. And it's wild. And again, with me, and like you've inadvertently kind of realized with the podcast, is like, of course, we're adding value by, one, we're creating a platform that's letting people be known about, be heard, an additional thing they can point to. I mean, like, Elias Dummer came on here, and I know he shares the clip a lot because he said something during his podcast that he's like, yeah, man, I love that quote and I want people to hear me say it. So he's got this little piece of content that he can send out. He made an Instagram reel out of it. Like, really cool. That benefits both of us. That's really great. And, you know, and again, same thing with the podcast. Like, if you ever hit me up and said, hey, man, I got a last minute guest. He lives in Murfreesboro. Can I come record your thing? Yeah, man, I got you. Come on. You know, that's networking. That's friendship. That's relationship.
That's because we've built a relationship already.
Yeah, 1,000%.
You know, it's not the networking to get that, but we've already got the friendship, and then we can say, hey, by the way, this is happening. Can you help me out? Vice versa.
Right.
And so it's not a big deal.
Yeah. And again, a lot of it's just like, I mean, there's just ways to go about things and ways to not do things in this town. And, you know, I've made the mistakes.
And that's what my podcast is all about is learning the do's and don'ts. It's getting advice from the guests who have gone through all of this stuff already to get their advice on how to approach and how to get your foot in the door and do things the right way in this town, in this business, to avoid those pitfalls that most of us have gone through. Because the reason that I started the podcast is because I've been here for 20 plus years. And so a lot of these people I already know and have a relationship with. And so it's a matter of saying, hey, this is what I'm doing. Would you guys come on and talk and share your story? Yeah. And they're like, sure. And in the process, you know, they've been able to connect me with other people that I don't know, you know, and that's where those side benefits have come from, you know, but, so.
Have you ever made the mistake, like when you first, like,
no,
no, so
probably
I used to think, because in the business world, this is a helpful tool. For argument's sake, you know, I've never met you before, right? But I'm pretty sure you know a guy that I'm friends with. So I might be like, oh yeah, do you know Jimmy Jones, you know? And he'd be like, yeah, I know Jimmy Jones. Like,
and all of a sudden you've got a connection. Right.
There's something to go, oh, cool. Like, there's this little connection thing. And that works great in the business world. But I find, so, and sometimes, unfortunately, you know, they might be like, yeah, you're friends with Jimmy Jones, right? Yeah, I met him recently. Really good dude. Now, granted, I don't know him, but it's just a pivot point of like, hey, here's something common. You know, because the last thing I want to do, especially if you're up here, I'm down here, is be like, hey, we're both artists. I'm on your level when I'm clearly not. So I don't know enough about the person to find a way to connect. A lot of people, myself included, will kind of, I used to think, well, that's going to bring us here, you know, and that's going to be a great place to start for us. And so I found myself one time, I met this artist, and right away I'm kind of like, okay, cool. He knows this guy. I bought a guitar off him recently, and you know, met him a ton of times. You know, like if I message him now, he'll probably respond. Like, I know that guy that well enough, and the worship pastor at my church is a big time songwriter. I'm gonna make sure I mention that I know him to kind of legitimize myself. All this insecurity stuff, you know. And early on in the conversation, he definitely he got weird when I mentioned, like, I think you know this guy, you know, and it's like, I do, yeah. And it just seemed to weird him out. And then even later, I'm like, yeah, you know, I was like, I was talking to, you know, this particular, I was talking to my worship pastor, and he's this, and he wrote this song, and now I ended up driving the guy home from that event that I met him at, because he lost his ride last minute. So I was like, no, I'll help you. And on the drive home, we were getting to know each other, you know? And then he was just like, hey, can I just give you a little critique, man? He's like, because he's like, this conversation now is so different than it was earlier today. He's like, you don't want to be name dropping and talking about people you kind of know. It's just not a good look. And at first I kind of thought, like, what is he talking about? What does he mean? And then now that I kind of know, I know certain people really well, and people try to do it to me, and how it feels like, what are you trying to manipulate me for? That's how it feels when it's done to me. And I'm like, ooh, I'm glad he told me. Because had he not told me, I would have continued to do that. And instantly been weirdo in weirdo status, you know, which, I mean, I probably weird people out already, because I am a little intense, but you know, that's just good advice. I mean, have you ever kind of done that kind of thing early on in your career and kind of realize, ooh, I'm kind of not doing this right?
Name dropping too
Yes.
often, things like that. I'm sure I have.
Yeah.
I would be dumb to say that I haven't, I would
Yeah.
say. And I think most of us that have moved to Nashville have probably done that to some degree. Most people probably fall into that category at
Yeah.
some point. But yes, I would say I've done that. And I try not to do it
Yeah.
now, especially now that I know more people and have stronger relationships than I did
Yeah.
way back in the day. And it's like, now when you're reaching out, when you're doing a podcast like this
Mhm.
and you're trying to get guests to come on to the show, that do the similar thing that those other people,
Mhm.
hey man, I know so-and-so,
Yeah.
I've had so-and-so, so-and-so, and so-and-so on, and you do that because
Yes.
you want the hopeful potential guest to know, oh, okay, you're legit.
It's that.
If
It's
these people
also
have done
it,
it, then I'm good to come on. I understand that, but then you don't want to go too far.
yeah, it's also because, like, I mean, I've reached out to people who probably never heard of my podcast and have been like, "What's your podcast about?"
Yeah.
And again, my podcast is essentially about the guest and whatever ends up coming up in the conversation.
Yeah.
Essentially, this is like a coffee hangout that's recorded.
Yeah.
And but with the purpose of somebody learning something. And I've learned a lot in this conversation, believe it or not. I know most people don't learn a ton from me because I'm always kind of the lesser in the thing. I'm like, teach me, but yeah, I've done that, and then I've had people been like, what's your podcast about? Da, da, da. And I realized, man, I should have told him, like you said, and now I do it. Like, hey, I'd love to have you on the show. Recently, I've had this person, this person, this person, to sort of show them, hey, yes, you're just like them. Like this, you fit into the scheme of what we're doing here.
Yeah.
Because some people, I mean, could you imagine? I mean, I look at it like this. Unfortunately, there's a lot of podcasts and shows that people try to bring people on. Like it happened to Lauren Daigle a couple years ago. She got, in my opinion, got baited into being on this podcast or whatever it was and basically then they throw these gotcha questions, and so I get it. While there's a lot of defenses up of like, look, I'm not looking to debate, talk about politics, or even be asked to clarify what my stance is on a controversial subject. That's just not okay, So that's one of the reasons why I try to go like same as you, like, hey, recently I've had this person, this person, this person, which are all equally successful. And let's be honest, it's partly, well, if they're willing to come on, you should too.
Yeah. Well, usually when I'm reaching out to people, it's because I will ask whoever my guest has been on.
Mhm.
So like you were on my podcast.
Mhm.
So my question when we finish everything, because they know that they've been through the process, they enjoyed it, it was a good thing. I'll ask them, hey, do you know 3 to 5 people that you can recommend that you can refer me to be a guest on the show as well? Because when I reach out to them, usually they'll reach out first and say, hey, I was just on this podcast with this guy. It's great, experience. Would you be interested for it? And if they say yes, then they'll connect me. And so that way there's an in there. That's not kind of a cold call.
Sure.
But I will say this, I have, through this whole process, and when I first got into the sync music world and all that kind of stuff a few years ago, and I've been booking myself as an artist for years. I mean, my whole career. I've been doing this for 25, almost 30 years now. And I have been my own booking agent for pretty much the whole thing. And I will say that I've been successful at booking, and I've not been successful at booking.
Yeah.
It's a hard lesson to learn, and how to reach out to people and how to write emails and how to call people especially when it's cold calling or emailing and they don't know who you are, why you're trying to reach out to them, what you want money from them, and you want to do what again, and all this kind of stuff. And a few years ago when I got into the sync world of doing this kind of stuff, one of the things that we learned was how to actually approach reaching out to music supervisors and sync agencies to get your music onto these things. And so I learned how to do that. I learned how to write an email. I learned how to be short, sweet, to the point, get your information out there. Thank you very much. And then walk away. And then if they reach out to you, great. And if they don't, whatever. You know, it's okay. Just move on. Don't ever just hound them. That's the number one thing. Don't ever just keep coming back and saying, I wrote you a couple weeks ago, but I never heard from you. Did you get my email? You know, like I said, you don't ever do that. Um, in the process of all that kind of stuff, I have gotten to the point where people will respond to me quickly, and it's a very much, it is a peer-to-peer conversation. Okay. Granted, you may be this number one selling artist, you may be the head of a record label, you may be whatever. It doesn't matter. We're all human. We all have insecurities. We all have struggles that we're going through. And if you can relate to that person in an email or a phone call and on a human level,
Yeah.
that breaks down all these barriers.
Oh, yeah.
Because you're no better than I am. I'm no better than you are. We're
Right.
all struggling to do life together, right? It's just depending on what it is that you do specifically for a living. So I never approach it as though, oh my gosh, this guy's so big and he's so much better than I am. I don't do that.
Right.
I used to do that, and I learned not to do that. And so when I contact somebody to reach out, whether it be to be on my podcast or to play a show or to get a sponsorship for something, whatever, guess what? We are on the same level.
Yeah.
You're the big wig in your thing.
Yeah.
I'm the big wig in mine. And we are just peers walking through life.
Yeah.
And that has broken down so many barriers. It is, and I mean, my wife calls me, she's like, you're daddy. You're in control of the situation. You know, it's like when somebody, and somebody's like, well, what is it again? And what is this? And how do I do this? And I started explaining to them and laying things out. Okay, here's what's going to happen, no matter what it is, you know, but I just started explaining when you know what you're talking about and you're not fumbling through.
Yeah.
And I probably have botched that a few times already today. Yeah. I've fumbled through some things, but when you're talking on a topic and you know what it is you're trying to convey, and they understand, oh, okay, this guy knows what he's talking about, then all of a sudden they perk up and they're like, oh, okay, and they'll relate to you differently.
Right. Well, certainty sells. Like that's the thing. Like I've been in the sales business on and off most of my life. The last 12 years, like my life's been revolving around sales. Outside of music, inside of music, it's everything's sales. And what I've learned more than anything is, certainty sells way more than knowledge of a product. You can wax poetic about everything you know, but what are you certain of? You know? And it's kind of like, and the example I often make with that is, and again, certainty matters with, like you just said, well, here, listen, this is what we're looking to do. We'd probably want to show up at your church. We'd want to get in as early as we can. If that's 7 a.m., that's great. If it's 11 a.m., whatever works best for you, we just want to make sure we have ample time to set up. So we're going to come in, we're going to, if your stage is already cleared off, if great, if not, we'll go ahead and we're going to want to make as much room on your stage as possible. We just sort of break down the steps of how things are going to start, how they're going to finish. And, that certainty of, even if they start going, oh, well, what if this? Oh, well, listen, if that's the issue, then this is what we're going to do. They love that certainty, and like I read a book about this FBI negotiator who talked about how there's a hostage situation. This guy's son was kidnapped by Haitian gangsters, and the guy calls, and he's the American citizen. So he calls the American embassy, and he's expecting in his head he's going to get a military militia to show up, right? But instead he gets a phone call from an FBI negotiator, and now what he could have done was, hi, I'm an FBI negotiator. I have a degree in this. I've worked at the CIA. I've done this. I've done this. I've done this. Goodbye. Hung up. What are you, out of your mind? Instead, he goes, so the dad goes, oh, you're an FBI negotiator? What are you going to do to help me? So he goes, well, here's the thing. He goes, hostage negotiators, they love to party. I'm going to have your kid out by Friday night because you know what? They want to party on Friday and they want to have enough money to maybe get by a little bit to party on Saturday. I'll have your son out by Friday. Here's what we're going to do. And he told him, he just told him a little bit of the plan. And what's the father's response? Okay, whatever you say, I'll do. He told him what we're going to do, the certainty. Hey, I'm going to get this done. Yeah. Not, hey, here's all the reasons you should trust me. And that certainty sells, man. It sells, and it's also one of the reasons why us as humans are so misled. You know, I mean, if someone's like, "Hey guys, there's a fire in the building, come with me," you're probably going to run with him, okay? Because he was so certain that he knew what he was doing.
Yeah.
You know, rather than someone going like, "Hey guys, we have to find a way out. Let's try this way." Half the people are going to be like, "Nah, man."
Mm-hmm.
So certainty is huge. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I notice like whenever I go into a meeting, or you're wanting to meet with somebody, if I go down to BMI,
Mhm.
right, and I need to meet with some high up person down there, and I don't know them. I'm a member of BMI. I'm a writer for them, but I don't know everybody that works there, obviously. But if I need to meet with somebody, and I walk into the front desk, whatever, and say, "Hey, I'm John Martin Keith. I need to meet with so and so. And what are you here for?" And if I'm just, like you said, if I'm certain about what it is I want to talk about, and they come out, and because the thing is, like when you go to BMI, like if they don't know you, there's like a door you have to wait at, and then because all their offices are back behind all this stuff, and then they come out, and then they will talk to you for a second, and if you're kind of like unsure about what it is that you're wanting to say or come across, then it's not going to go very well, as quickly. But if you know exactly what it is if you can speak clearly and say, "Okay, this is what I'm here for, this is who I am, this is what I do, and this is what I want to talk about," the chances are they're like, "Oh yeah, come on back and we'll go do it," or "Let's set up a time in the future," or whatever it is.
Mhm.
So that's just an example.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, that makes sense. That makes perfect sense. You know, it's like, I mean, that's just like anything else. Again, it's that certainty, and I guess it's about having laser focus. You got to know what you want, why you're doing what you're doing,
Mhm.
and I mean, I think that's important with almost everything you'll ever do creatively or in business. You
Yeah.
have to have an objective. Why are
Yeah.
you here?
Well, you asked me at the very, very beginning of the interview, is like, why did you know what you always wanted to do?
Yeah.
When you came to Nashville? Since I was 4 years old, 5 years old,
Yeah.
I've known I've wanted to do music. And you asked, like, does it look like you thought it would when you were little, growing up? And I said yes and no.
Yeah.
And I don't think we ever officially got to that answer, but yes and no. Yes, I am doing music full time for a living, and I've been doing it for years. Does it look like I thought it would when I was
Yeah.
a kid? No, I thought I was going to be, selling out arenas,
Mhm.
and millions of albums sold.
Yeah.
My life has not turned out that way.
No.
I'm a worship pastor, and I tour all over the country, and I do guest worship leading. I go to different churches, and I lead
Yeah.
worship for churches around the country. I play concerts. Get to play festivals. I get to book my own tours. I do all the things that I've always wanted to do. I don't do them to the extent,
Right.
to the size level that I had always wanted and thought that would happen.
And it
But
still could.
it still could, and I have, and I've got to play. I've played in 15,000 people. I've done
Yeah.
all that stuff, and I'm super grateful for it. And I've played rooms of 5 people,
Yeah.
and I've played 15,000 people, and everywhere in between.
Yeah.
And I'm grateful for all of it. And I've told other people, I was like, one of my favorite. Most of the time, I enjoy the smaller crowds
Yeah. Me too.
because it's more intimate. and
Yeah.
there's more of an interconnection.
The
that you get
fruit
to
is
have
the
people.
fruit's a little more apparent from
Yeah,
the
because
event.
you get to build relationships with
Yeah.
the audience, and you get to build friendships with them. And
Yeah.
I've got people that were fans that have turned into years and years ago that are friends, and some of them are like family now.
Yeah.
That you don't get. On
There's
that
something
huge level.
special about
So
it. I agree.
There's that whole side of things. So it doesn't look like I thought it would, but I'm grateful for what it is.
Yeah.
And the whole point of my podcast, You Can Make a Living in the Music Industry,
Yeah.
is to tell people that the point is that, can you make a living? Can you pay your bills? And so if you have a family, can you support your family
Right.
making music?
Yeah.
That is, to me, that is success.
Yeah.
And I get to make a living doing music, do multiple things, but it's everything that encompasses what I enjoy and love doing in music. All different,
It's wrapped around it.
it's all wrapped around that core. And I get to support my family doing music. So am I successful at doing music? Yes.
Yeah.
And
You're
that's the
doing
goal.
you're doing a lot of good things, man.
That's the goal.
So if people want to reach out to you, find your podcast, find you on social media, what's a great way for them to do that?
Yeah, the podcast is everywhere. I mean, just if you're on what is it, Apple Music,
Mhm.
iTunes, Spotify.
So everywhere you podcast, it's there.
Everywhere you listen to podcasts, you can make a living in the music industry.
Yeah. Where can they find your music?
My music is on iTunes.
Under
John Martin Keith.
So search him up there. And on social media, were you on Instagram, Facebook?
Yeah, Facebook, John Martin Keith. I got a page on there, artist page. There's a podcast page. You can make a living in the music industry page on there. So all that stuff's on Facebook. John Martin Keith at John Martin Keith on Instagram, and it's pretty much a podcast page. Really, that's really what I turned it into.
Gotcha.
One of the fun things, I mean, I know we got to wrap up, but one of the fun things we're talking about just kind of different stuff, and which is fun. I was coming in under the impression that we were all going to all talk about music at the beginning, and then we ended up talking about this other stuff, which is kind of cool. But I'd say one of the things is that doing music for a living, one of the things that I just is driving me crazy is that music loops in my head.
Yeah.
Morning, noon, and night. It never stops.
Yeah.
Like as soon as my eyes open, sometimes before my eyes even open, as soon as I'm conscious, music will start looping in my head.
Yes.
And drives me crazy. I don't know if you deal with that.
A little bit. It's a little, I'll explain after you.
It's in like 5 to 10 second loops. And it's just like the same thing over and over and over. And like I'll literally tell myself, shut up, you know, and asking God, please make it stop, because it just never stops.
Yeah.
And I'll force myself to go into a different song just to get the other one out.
Yeah.
And then that one will loop. So unless I'm focusing or talking like we're doing now on something specific, or I've got, you know, I'm really focusing on whatever. And even then, sometimes that doesn't even help. Like right now, I got something that's playing in the back of my head. I'm just like, oh my gosh, please stop, you know? But I've found my personal getaway from that recently that I've enjoyed doing, because I love we've talked about all these different things, is I started painting. I grew up drawing.
Yeah.
I've been an artist my whole life, but I've gotten into painting. You remember Bob Ross?
Yeah. Happy Little Trees.
Happy Little Trees, Happy Accidents, and you know, all that stuff. I grew up watching him on PBS, you know, and this past year, there's a Bob Ross channel that you can get. And of course, during lockdowns and everything going on in the world, we started watching the Bob Ross channel and just like fell in love because it was so peaceful. And it always amazed me he could paint a masterpiece in 26 minutes. You know, it's just like this amazing thing. And we sit and watch that and watch it for like a couple of hours sometimes, because it's just 24 hours of Bob Ross.
Yeah.
And I told my wife, I was like, I can do that. I mean, I've drawn my whole life. I was like, I've done this stuff.
I say the same thing when I watch American Ninja Warrior. I'm like, well, I can do that.
Yeah. So I
just hurt myself laughing at that. That's how.
That's how. But my wife and my daughter, they got me Bob Ross painting set for my birthday this year, and had to wait because, of course, that was in the process of putting Life Fest together. I had to wait until all the festival was over with. But once that was over with, I pulled it out and I started learning how to paint Bob Ross, and like that's my go-to now. Like I've done tons of Bob Ross paintings now that I do, and landscapes, and it usually takes a couple of hours to do a painting. Granted, he's doing it in 30 minutes or less.
Yeah.
But you know, but I'm doing it, and I just like the music stops for 2 hours, man. I'm just like.
So it sounds like what you're saying is you found a hobby to focus on, to be able to focus your mind and some of your energy on that, you know, just helps you to escape. Yeah.
It gives you a break.
And, you know, it's fun. It's so funny you mentioned this, man, because that's been a struggle for me. So almost everything that I do, because I love it, has become something I love it so much, and I find myself, and I hope this doesn't cross as arrogant, but I find myself doing it at such a high level, I have no choice but to monetize it.
Yeah.
And so it's like all of a sudden, hey, I don't have any hobbies, because everything I did for fun became a business. Mm-hmm. And it's like, so for me, I'm constantly finding myself, my brain's thinking on, how do I make money off this? You know, how much can I sell that for? Like, it bothers me. People walk in my house and they'll like, you know, because one of my side businesses is reselling, and it's like they'll walk in my house and I'll happen to look at their shoes, and right away I can just by the kind of shoes they have and how much I can sell them for, I don't like my brain goes there. It's a problem. Yeah. But as far as music, dude, for me it's worse. than just music in my head. Because music, like there's like this soundtrack to everything. I could be driving down the highway, and depending on my mood, I might have like a loop of like, it might be like the Matrix in my dun 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 dun. Like I get weird. Sometimes it's just instrumentals, sometimes it's an actual like song with lyrics. But what happens too is like sometimes like I'll be in a conversation, and before I can even respond, like a movie, like a scene or a quote from a movie pops in my head, or even like a commercial, something I seen in a commercial. There was a time, and there's a lot of times where someone will say something and I'll be like, oh, and I'll send them a YouTube video real quick of like this moment. It's like, that's my response to it. So a guy I know, he was like, dude, you're like Bumblebee from the Transformers. He can't talk, but he like plays back all these little quotable things and scenes from movies. It's like, that's my brain, and it's the strangest thing, like if someone's like, if someone says something about like, if someone's like, oh, what's his name? And in the name of love, like just weird stuff, or if someone's like, oh, let's do that one more time. Hit me, baby. Like just that's what happens. Yeah. Like these weird responses. Or, it could be like someone's like, like my wife will be like, we were in a store one time. She goes, oh, wow, they got a lot of skis. And I'm like, are those skis yours? Both of them? Like from Dumb and Dumber, it's a quote. It just doesn't stop. Yeah. And one of the things that I have found that helps quiet all that stuff for some reason, I started collecting these stupid Funko Pop things, which are like nostalgia for my soul. And it gets my mind off. It's weird to think because a lot of this stuff's pop culture and all the craziness, right? But what it does for me is when I find one that I'm like, oh, cool. Like, I remember this movie. I'll remember the movie. And I'll start thinking about a moment or like a memory from like, like when I was a little kid, man, playing hockey, and like I'd watch the Mighty Ducks, and I'd go like go out my street and start like shooting a puck at a garage sale, at a garbage pail. Same amount of syllables, and it was like, that would be inspiring. And it's like, it just quiets my mind off the constant racing of music and movie scenes. Yeah. And it's so like relaxing. Plus, I'm not trying to monetize that because I'm probably going to lose money on every one of them I buy, but then it look cool as heck in my office. But you remind me of myself in that hearing when you're talking about painting. I find when I'm the most stressed out, I need to go find a project to do, whether it's clean, organized. I used to love to solder, to like just make XLR cables until I turned it into a business. And I said, I'm not doing this anymore. But I used to, like when I needed to build snakes and stuff, I found the act of soldering and focusing. Quiet mind, man. Yeah. That's amazing.
Gives you something specific to focus on. Yeah.
So, I mean, I guess if someone was to listen to this, who is a creative, who is constantly sort of haunted by the creative, that thing that makes you want to create. Yeah. So, finding something that is, I don't want to call painting's not necessarily mindless, but something that is either mindless or requires laser focus.
It's not mindless. It is focusing. It's relaxing, but you're very focused on the task at hand, at what you're doing. Yeah. Thankfully, so much that I block everything else out, like all the music and other thoughts, whatever, because I'm trying to figure out, okay, how do I make sure that this tree looks like it's supposed to look, right? Or these clouds, like that seems really weird to say, but it's very specific to get it to look like what he actually does. Mm-hmm. So in order to do those types of things, you got to be like really paying attention to make sure that's done the correct way. And so when I'm doing that, then everything else goes away. Yeah. And because like you said, my hobby turns into my career, and it's all one for me. You know, it's what I love. The things I love the most are the things I end up doing for a living. Yeah. And you find yourself, I mean, at least for me, I have found myself in situations even recently where I'm just like, there's no escape. Like, you know what I mean? Like I for a while, and granted, I still need to find like an activity that I enjoy doing outside of just collecting something. But because it's very easy, and this is easy for anybody in the creative world to get, you get trapped because, like I remember as a kid, like my escape was, man, I go down the rink, I play hockey all weekend. When I was on that rink, with my skates on, like, man, the world could crumble around me for
for the next couple hours. It doesn't matter. Also, you know, and what a great escape. And I think the older we get as adults, and even the more successful we become in the creative industry, the harder it is to, you know, to find the time, I guess you will.
Yep.
And I realize that all fits in the idea of self-care and things like that. And, you know, when what you're talking about blocking things out, like when I don't love flying. I'm not scared of flying, but it definitely makes me uneasy. And literally, I never play Tetris except for when I'm on a plane. I'll sit there and play Tetris all whole time and find it like, you know, no anxiety. No, I'm not worried about anything. I don't even listen to music. I just sit there and play the game. And it's such a nice, like, because, and I also think too, it's a bit of a control freak thing too. Like I'm the most, like, I feel like I'm at my best when there's chaos and I'm in control of fixing it, right?
Sure.
Because it's already chaos. I got this.
Yeah.
I'm a problem
When you're a fixer.
solver. Yeah,
absolutely.
So when hey, I'm painting, you're actually in control.
Yeah.
It's controlled chaos that this is my happy place, something I'm fully zen and in control of. That's why, believe it or not, they say that, you know, for some people like us, like even having a collection of some kind is a sense of control and you're curating it. And
I'm a collector.
Yeah. And like with the Funko Pops, like I collect specific ones, ones from movies, TV, things I like a lot that make me smile. Like, oh, I remember that scene in Billy Madison and that was really funny. And I quote that a lot and I'll enjoy having that catch my eye when I'm in my office and be like, you know, shampoo is better, you know, like that's a good thing. And I realize what a weird, like, man, we're all just kind of weird, aren't we? But
Yes.
you know, you said something earlier about like how we're all the same and stuff like that, you know, and even when someone's maybe more successful. And, you know, Joe Rogan, I think, put it best. He talked about something like, man, when he had a kid, and he's so right when he said this, but he's like, man, we're all just a baby. We're a baby. And we just happen to grow up. And in the process of that growing up, some of us got certain skills and talents in that process. Some of us got kind of messed up. Some of us got some stuff that we're dealing with, and we're just the sum of all that. But ultimately, we're all just a bunch of babies in a sandbox, you know, ultimately. That's what we are. And when you look at other people that way, more of this is just another kid in the sandbox playing, man, and block out all that other stuff. Man, your relationships with other people are better. Because when you take away all of that stuff, what's a baby in a sandbox? Baby in a sandbox is just focusing on this moment, like, you know, whatever it is we're going to build or whatever it is we're going to play. Or, you know, maybe, hey, that kid's on the other side of the sandbox. He ain't bothering me. I'm not bothering him. Let me just do this thing. And, you know, I learned a lot about what we're supposed to be as people by watching children. You go down to a park, and I'll never forget this. And you know what? I never forget it, but sometimes I forget to live by it. But I remember watching my daughter who's 12, maybe 2 years old, maybe 3. You know, we show up at this playground and she was so happy to be at the playground. My gosh, you know, and when you see a 2 or 3 year old kid, when they see other little kids, what do? They get excited. Oh my gosh, other kids. And they don't care if they're black kids, white kids, you know, Oriental, it doesn't matter. Yep. They just see other kids and they'll show up and there's maybe a game of tag happening and can I play? Yeah, all right. And, you know, my daughter she'd be at the bottom she'd slide down the slide and then stand at the bottom of the slide and watch other kids go down the slide and she'd cheer every time they went down and, you know, just running around. Everyone's happy and everyone's happy that they're all winning and no one's fighting and no one cares about anything else except for, yay, we're all having a good time together. Yeah. That's what the world is supposed to be. What happens to us later? I would love to know. But that's the way I want the world to be again. That's the way I want my life to be. That's how, like you asked me in my podcast about my band, man, that's what I want everyone in, like, I have this dream that, like, you know, I get to like see my funeral and I get to go, man, like I got to know him and I have this fantasy that I get to relive all those great moments we had together and the great moments I got to watch other people win. Like that's who I strive to be. But then there's this other thing that creeps in of like, well, I want him to have it good, but not too good. not better than me.
Yeah.
Why? And it's like, why does this happen to us?
Well, it's because
makes
we
me
live in a
so
sinful
sad.
world. I mean, we live in a broken,
Yeah.
sinful world that that's part of life. I mean, we can't change that. You know, that the world is broken and fallen in sin. That is the way it's been since Adam and Eve.
Man, and I pray that heaven is like a playground and we're all 3 years old.
Well, it's gonna be so much more than that.
Yeah, but I mean, it definitely won't be. I just pray it's nothing less.
No, absolutely. I mean, I can't wait for eternity to start, and I pray every day that come Lord Jesus, come get us, and let's start this, and so let's start eternity together as soon as possible, so that we can get to the point to where the new heaven and new earth start, and sin is no longer around, and we don't have to worry about that anymore. We will live in perfect harmony with everyone who is in the new heaven and the new earth, you know, and worshiping Jesus. I cannot wait for that. That's what I'm excited for.
Yeah.
And that's what I think that's both of us. That is what our ultimate message is to people as Christian artists and as believers. And so,
yeah. And I mean, we could have a whole nother podcast episode. We'll have to have you back to dive in more into some of this stuff, because you're a very, I mean, I knew this going in, but you're a very deep and interesting person, much like I think I am too. But, you know, I definitely feel like, you know, when it comes to this thing, it's like, man, everything you just said, sometimes I feel that, and I'm like, you know, and it's like, man, I feel that way, but then why am I putting so much focus on all the things that I'm doing and building when it's all just going to be gone and it's not going to matter? And I mean,
I struggle with it too.
Yeah.
I mean, and we're actually not supposed to. We're actually not supposed to put as much emphasis on the things that we are talking about that we do. Like scripturally, we're not supposed to do that.
Totally.
But at the same time, you and I both struggle with that, because we love, you know, you're not supposed to love the things of the world. And that's a whole nother, I guess that's a whole nother conversation. But the thing is that you and I both love collecting things. We both find value in things that only have value on this earth. They do not have value in eternity. But while we're here on this earth, we want to enjoy these things. And there's nothing wrong with that. You know, but the goal is to not let those things become your idol in this world, and become the God that you serve. Because that's where we it's a fine line that we walk, being Christians and who do music and do ministry for a living, and that, you know, and the focus is supposed to be on the eternal. At the same time, we love collecting, and we love reselling, and we love things like that have value. And so it's a very tricky line that we have to walk. So we have to be careful.
You know, life's just this game of trying to keep perspective, you know, and I mean, we all struggle with it. I mean, man, you know, nothing puts some things in perspective more like, you know, when a loved one passes away. Like when my mom passed away, okay, now I don't talk too much about this, but like, you know, I had a complicated relationship with my mother. I love my mother, but sometimes the things that come out of her mouth, or would come out of her mouth, things that she would say, were, man, they just would cut. And, you know, what made it harder is when you would express that, man, that hurt, it would be, you know, you being a baby. Excuse me? Like, you're the one who said, like, talk about gaslighting, you know, it was complicated, you know, and then, of course, you know, her cancer battle was hard to help. I mean, I got a family to raise, I got businesses to run, plus my mom. This is not easy, you know? And in some ways, you know, when her life was obviously coming to an end, there's the guilt of like a little bit of this, oh, this is going to be a lot easier now. And you feel terrible. Like, this is my mother. I should not feel that way. But one of the perspectives things that I looked at was like, man, first off, toward the last week of her life was her basically like her body slowly shutting down. You know, they had to put pads all around her bed because she could barely control her body, but she was trying to get up. She kept trying to get up and move around. Yeah. And she just couldn't. And, you know, I would go see her after a day of trying to trying to do all kinds of things, whether it was booking shows. At that time, I was building this podcast studio, trying to figure out how to make this work, how to make that work, all these things, getting annoyed at some business stuff that isn't quite shaping up, and getting mad and getting frustrated and whatever. Then go see my mother and realize, man, this woman would give anything just to be able to get up.
Mm-hmm.
At the end of the day, it's like, man, I'm sitting here, life sucks because this, I'm sitting here, life sucks because of this. Or, man, I didn't get all the bookings. Or, man, this radio station will only play indie artists. And getting mad. And it's like, man, I have something somebody would do anything to have, which is to be able to get up.
Yeah.
I can wake up in the morning and go somewhere. I have somewhere to go. Oh, the perspective. Like, man, I can take another breath. There's somebody on a ventilator right now who can't even do that. You're like, man, perspective. And it's like, man, it's like, what makes me mad is you go through that. I go, as people, myself, I go through this experience. I got to see this horrific thing that you'd think would have changed me forever, right? Like, man, I'm going to live each day knowing that how blessed I am, how grateful I am to exist. But yet that's easily just washed away again tomorrow. Like, tomorrow is another day that I act like, oh, this is everything. And that didn't change. I don't understand. It's like, so why is it so hard to get perspective and then hang on to it?
Yeah.
That's one of the hardest things I think for people like us to experience is like, we know we're in some unhealthy cycles. And we know, we know how to fix them, but we don't. Are we addicted to the cycle? Is that the issue? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's a challenge, man. And a lot of people are like, man, you're so lucky to get to do this, that, the other thing. It's like, sometimes I'm not so sure, man, because it's a lot harder I think it's a lot harder than people think it is to be a creative, to make a living, being an entrepreneur, being a musician even, because it's almost like a curse too, and especially, like I said, people like us who like to collect, that's sort of a bit of a trigger, or not a trigger, but like a sign that, man, we have this insatiable need to control.
Yeah. I've never looked at it as needing to control. That's an interesting perspective.
Yeah, it's a sense of control and
I just like things. I like having collections of things, not because I need to control it. I think there's a way to look at it from both perspectives, but that's interesting.
Well, because it's in a way, you think about collecting anything for the most part. It's sort of a sense of like, like what I have because I want it. What I don't have, I choose not to have.
Mm-hmm.
Like I said, those silly Funko Pops, like there's plenty I come across like, oh, cool, they make that. I don't want it. I don't need it. And there's something cool and there's something enjoyable about like, yeah, I don't want that one. It's like what I have, what I want to have. I have what I choose.
Yeah.
And it's interesting, just again, a lot of the subconscious nature and a lot of what I'm learning, because that's the thing. I went into 2021 with this journey of I need to understand myself because, I hear people like, I think during your podcast, you're like, I want to understand what makes you tick. I'm like, dude, I'm in therapy trying to figure out what makes me tick. Okay. I don't even know, and then the more it's, man, I can't encourage this enough, whether you're creative or not, but especially if you're creative, man, it's amazing when you really dive deep into why are you the way you are.
Mm-hmm.
And a good amount of why you are the way you are isn't really because of any of things that is in your control. A lot of it's like, it's amazing how much I'm learning, how much our childhood shaped us.
Sure. Things that have happened to you or to people around you that you're connected to.
Yeah. And
it's a reactionary thing that you have to deal with for the rest of your life.
It is. And then what happens, like, I finally come to the realization of like, man, in my adult life, everything that happens to me in my adult life is 100% on me. Mm-hmm. All of it. And, some make the argument of like, well, like, well, what if you flew on the plane and you got like sick because of it? Well, I bought the ticket. I chose to get on the plane.
Yeah.
I know that's a possibility, and I went ahead anyway. It's my problem. And when you do, and it's interesting knowing all that, taking that responsibility on and going, hey, everything that happens to you is your own responsibility. Man, first of all, I'm happier knowing that.
Mm-hmm.
And you know why? Because I'm realizing now I am in control. It's a control thing, man. I am in control of my own destiny in a way. Now, granted, God's in control, of course. But at the end of the day, you know, every choice I make, you know, or almost everything that happens is a result of the choice I make. Now, my prayer is that God is putting those choices on my heart, the better choice on my heart to make. But at the end of the day, when things go wrong, it's on me. It makes me realize I'm not a victim. You know, like they did. It's like, oh, this church didn't choose me for their event. They didn't do it to hurt me. I look at it like, all right, I didn't present myself well enough to make them go, oh my gosh, we have to have you. Okay, I'll do better next time. But see, the old me would have been like, they're jerks. Ugh, they don't know what they want. They don't know what they're doing. Nope, I didn't present myself well enough, you know? Or at the same time, it just wasn't what they were looking for.
Yeah.
That's okay. But, you know, it's just, man, it's just a wild thing, the way we are as people and whatnot. But man, this has been awesome. I definitely have to have you come back again sometime, man.
I would love to.
I really enjoyed chatting with you. I enjoyed being on your podcast as well. And, you know, I can't thank you enough for being here, and thank you enough for being on yours. And, you know, I look forward to seeing some of your Bob Ross paintings on Instagram, and, you know.
I'll put them out. Yes, I will put some stuff out.
You know, see, I'll tell you right now, you want to know the first thing I thought of? See, I monetize everything. This is what I do, right? Mm-hmm. You know what I thought of? Man, you can auction those paintings off as, you know, hey, guys, I'm going to auction these off. Proceeds will benefit my podcast.
all that stuff's already gone through my head.
I'm sure it has, but like I said,
Absolutely.
That's where my mind went. As soon as I'm like, oh boy. So I'm like, see, you can't turn it off, man. Yeah. It's nuts.
But it's fun. I enjoy it.
John Martin Keith, a.k.a. Marty Keith, thank you so much for being on, man. It is
Thank you so much for having me. I really, really appreciate it.
Yeah, God bless you, man.
You too, buddy.